Hi, welcome back, everybody. Or I should say, welcome back to the people who started early to drop into the exhibitors areas. But now this is the main session, and I'm really excited about some of the people we've got coming up. Just to go through a few parish notices, the fire exits are on, well, actually, you all know better than I do where you need to exit from in an emergency, luckily. And this is the section where we've got some really interesting presentations from people who are supporting us. And you can view this now. You'll be viewing it. There's a YouTube channel as well. And you've got the Slido option to ask questions. And that was, I already had something actually just came up as I was speaking. DB Recursive Room really enjoyed the discussions about this and that. It's non-specific, but it's good. So keep those questions coming, because that's the sort of method that I'll be able to sort of give people answer, people who are coming up through the session. And I think it'll just build naturally. So you're all in place, I hope. And some people will drop in later, but just to let you know, you've got the link now, you're watching live on the platform. And so for the first time, welcome to all the people who have just arrived, which is great. My name's Chris Powell. Just have to say that again. Say it one more time. My name is Chris Powell, and I'm the chairman of AVCF, Audiovisual Cultural Forum, which is a group which you'll know. Well, actually, many of you do know me because we've met live, but I've noticed there's a lot of people that are coming in for the first time, and I would encourage you to reach out, get in touch with us. There's plenty of ways of doing that. You can email me directly, and any questions and things later, I can always put you in touch with different people, because I know where everybody is, and that's the way that will work. So please feel free any way you like. We do a newsletter as well. If you want to subscribe to that, you can also do that via the website. So there's a lot of options to interact. Sadly, the thing that we haven't really got, that we usually do have, because we're very much a live events sort of forum, we thrive off of just meeting people and people chatting and talking. And sadly, it's something we're moving forward on that. It's good to stay in touch, but nothing is a real substitute for the buzz that people get when they first come. For instance, you have coffee, you can always tell the conversation is going around, and you almost have to move people out to sort of start the real thing when you go to the theatre or the exhibitions room. So sadly, we haven't got exactly that, but later on you'll see something in your links. You've got something called the Snug, which is something I'll tell you a little more about as we go on later on. And let me see, what else do I need to tell you? Yes, one of our things is people, not boxes. That came up in something somewhere, and I thought that's kind of a nice phrase, because it really is about the people. It's about you and the decisions you make. And that also informs the Intelligent AV, which we brand this, what is an annual event, really, because it's the intelligent use of audiovisual technology in its different places. Everybody wants something, even from the very simple things to the very large things. And you have to sort of choose what is available, what sometimes, if you don't have the purchasing power to get things, what you'll work towards. So there are many constituent elements in how you move forward in your own projects. And I found, although there are generalities of what we're doing, everybody has a unique approach on what they actually want. And so that's also why I'm quite excited about the museum group that I've got later on that are coming in. There's some quite high-powered people there that know their stuff, and that's going to be very interesting. Now, on the next session, the session of talks, I've deliberately, not really, dropped in and analysed. Some people have been working on stuff, so I can be very responsive to it, because I'm seeing it for the first time. Although I know in broad stroke what people are sort of doing and how they've done things and what themes they're exploring. but it's going to be very exciting for me to actually watch for the first time when they come on. And hopefully that will stimulate questions from you and from me, and that's how we'll go forward. So just to let you know, coming up, we're going to have, let me just see on my schedule, so I've glanced to the side, yes. So just to make sure, we've got Shure UK coming up, very interesting presentation, and after that we've got White Light, who are always provided us in our live event arena with very interesting, stimulating content. Then we've got DB and Recursive doing a joint kind of presentation. And again, this is going to be new to me, so that's going to be really interesting to see. And then we've got NEC coming on. So there's some real heavyweight people. They're reflected in the exhibitors areas. Now, during the main presentation, some of the visitors areas will be resting because they have to come on and do a presentation, but others are open. So I hope you will stay with the main arena, but feel free if you want to visit the exhibitors, because that's an important part. Then maybe you can only get in for an hour and there's something really, really crucial you want to ask someone about, or someone you've never talked to before and say, oh, can you tell me about X? So I hope that covers some of the sort of bases of what we're doing. We're going to be sort of going pretty much full on now from 2 o'clock right through till 5:30ish, and I'll be making more announcements tying this all together. It's all an experiment for us, but you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. We're living in strange times. This is a very interesting platform, a way of doing it, and I'm sure all of you, I mean, how else have we lived by just doing Zoom calls like this? So any suggestions, any comments, any questions, use your Slido. So if I'm glancing down every so often, I'm seeing things coming up. Is that a Blue Yeti mic? Yes, it is. I'll be selling it off in auction because I think they're quite hard to get hold of from Amazon, which is where everybody's sort of going at the moment. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite onto the stage our first company to give a presentation, and that will be Shure UK. So maybe, Andrew, if you would like to join the stage at your convenience.
Hello, Chris. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon.
So I know the Shure family, not the real family, but the ethos of your company. And you've always, I can't remember exactly when we first met, but you've always been explained to me by John Ellis that you are the man to go to when you want to know how everything works. Would that be a correct statement?
Broadly speaking, yes. My responsibilities at Shure as the applications engineering manager is to be product specialist, particularly on the conferencing systems. So our MXA family of microphones, our DSP platforms like P300, IntelliMix Room. And then as a bit of a sideline to that, I dip into wireless microphones with ULXD and Axia Digital, but I certainly have colleagues who I can call upon who have more knowledge on those products versus myself. But I'm here, I come from an integration background, so I've done a lot of system design, installation, integration and commissioning in my time. And yeah, now I'm here to be very honest to working for Shure and present on topics which I've learned loads about over the last 10 to 15 years in the industry.
Well, it's way beyond me at this stage. I'm an old-fashioned. My era has kind of gone, and no doubt you could actually probably fix an overhead projector or something like that, or an Ectopro slide. But that's kind of when I was.
I remember them well.
So maybe you'd like to carry on with your presentation.
Yes, absolutely. We have chosen at Shure to deliver a slightly different presentation this time to previous, in that At the back end of last year, we undertook a research study which was trying to really understand what the state of video conferencing was in corporate environments. And what I'm going to present to you today are the findings of that research study. And I think a lot of you will feel that you know what's coming up, but there are some really interesting data points here, and it certainly adds weight to some of your arguments when you get into the idea of asking for budget for certain things where IT departments in particular may not necessarily understand why it is that you're asking for these things. So the study was taken out over 401 business IT professionals because we recognize that a lot of IT budget is being used up on AV equipment nowadays, and AV departments are sadly declining, or at least they're merging into the IT side of businesses. And one of the most eye-opening findings was that only 21% of boardrooms are set up with the appropriate AV technology. So out of 401 businesses, 21% of them, or 79% of them, don't have an appropriately fitted out boardroom for doing good AV technology for virtual meetings. And only 36% of those conference rooms overall had the right technology. So really, really interesting finding that not everyone is evangelical about kitting out the right technology as we are. So it certainly gives us an experience and some opportunity to explain why investing in good audiovisual technology is beneficial for business. So can we move on, please? So of these 401 interviewees, 2/3 of them believe that employers lack the right conferencing technology. It's quite a startling result there. So, all this money that people are investing into Zoom platforms, Teams, 2/3 of business professionals still believe that it's not correct. Let's move on. So our study, as I said before, interviewed 401 participants along with a dedicated research company called Illuminas. And while this survey was conducted in the US, we believe that the results can be extrapolated out globally. So the participants came from enterprise organizations with 1,000 or more employees, with a mix of industries, excluding education, government, and market research. So the study includes both AV buyers and users of conferencing solutions, with the following distinctions between their roles and responsibilities. So users are executives, directors, managers, and staff who attend virtual meetings at least 5 times a week. That's probably gone up now. We're all working at home. And at least one of those meetings occurred in an AV-equipped conference room. Buyers and executive directors, managers, and staff who influence AV technology purchase decisions and provide support and maintenance for at least 5 AV-equipped rooms. Well, that gives you a bit of a broad overview of who is answering our questions here. Let's move on. So here we can see a nice little split of the top industries in our research study for the user profile and the top departments. So the top industries are banking and finance, healthcare and pharmaceutical, and the top departments being administration, sales, and HR. Let's move along. I've got a lot of slides to get through, so we're going to go quickly. And here from the buyer side, the top industries were high technology, healthcare, pharmaceutical, so they're up there for both buyer profiles. We've got retail and banking, top 4. And then the involvement in collaboration solutions on the right-hand side there is, are they implementing, servicing, or maintaining solutions? Okay, so 100% of them actually agreed that they were somehow involved in troubleshooting technical issues. So I think we've got a fairly good opinion split here of the type of people we're asking for. So the methodology the study was online, web-based. It was 15 to 20 minutes in length and conducted amongst these 2 buyers and users of collaboration solutions. And the objectives for the research study were to understand who were these key drivers of a successful meeting and what challenges do they face. Then we can gauge the importance of meetings and meetings with virtual attendees, and then try and identify investment trends in collaboration solutions. And of course, because we are an audio company, we wanted to explore the importance of audio within these virtual meetings. So now I've given you an idea of how we conducted the research. I'm going to go into the very high level detail of the findings. Good news, video conferencing is becoming more critical to the business and everyone believes it's going to grow. So there we are, that's good for us. I think there's an animation here that we can move on to. There we are. So 9 out of 10 employees are engaged and are indicating that virtual meetings are imperative to the success of their organization. Moving on. However, 96% of business professionals are frustrated with their virtual meetings. That's pretty much everyone, isn't it? And the 4% are probably the people who specified the system in the first place. So almost everyone experiences some frustration with the meeting, and the majority of them are 193 users out of 201 are frustrated. And we've worked out the maths, okay? So here we go. We started to pull in what are the top 5 frustrations you experience in your virtual meeting rooms. And what I want to point out here is we didn't emphasize here audio as anything specific. And yes, we wanted to find out what people's reactions were towards the audio experience, but we certainly didn't have any leading questions to try and get them to focus on that as being a problem. What we really wanted to do was uncover real frustrations and be agnostic about what they were. So here we go. Let's have a look at them. Problem number 1, background noise ranks as 51% of people's frustrations. And I think there's a step through here. Yeah, thank you. We've got difficulty connecting. 45% of people have difficulty in connecting to their virtual meeting rooms. 43% say that they experience echo whilst in these experiences. The audio cuts in and out, and we can't hear each person. So there we are. A lot of those are audio related because you can't have a very good video call without audio. And so here we started to ask and find out what the personal impact was of these technological issues. So you're in a meeting, you expect it to go well, then something happens and it means that it doesn't go well. So what is the personal impact to you as the attendee of that meeting? Well, 73% of people just get frustrated or annoyed. And then actually some, 18% of people are apathetic. They expect it. It's like, oh yeah, well, these always go wrong, so why wouldn't it go wrong this time? And 16% of people are actually somewhat afraid of the repercussions of their meeting going wrong due to technical issues. And if we split this out between like regular level staff or moving up into the executive staff, we get a bit of a disproportional split here. So the executives feel more disappointed, more embarrassed, and more afraid and more angry of the repercussions. And that's probably quite understandable. Hold on a minute, my TV's flashing up that it's going to turn off. I don't want that. We're back. Yes, we're back. Sorry about that. So yeah, executives are significantly more likely than staff to experience severe outcomes such as the negative impact of brand reputation or customer confidence or even a loss of a customer sale. So yes, getting the buy-in of the executive staff as to how and why we can improve these virtual meetings is definitely going to benefit them in the long run. Can we move on, please? So of the technical issues, 33% of virtual meetings have a technical issue. And the escalation of a technical issue, so if you experience this problem, do you ignore it? Do you tell your AV department, or do you flag an IT issue with a service ticket or something like that? So daily, 10% of meetings get escalated as an issue, and 11% of them are never. So we can kind of see here there's a trend between experiences happening and actually the majority of them never get flagged as being an issue. So 82% of people in our research study experienced a negative consequence as the result of a technical issue. So, okay, cool. So the business impact of technical issues is also really interesting. So again, the slide builds here, so we might need to just tap through it. So same thing, we've split out the columns from executives to staff, and we've got productivity loss, higher in the executives, a rescheduled call, higher in the staff. That's probably understandable, seeing as executive time is more precious and they probably wouldn't want to reschedule a majority of their meetings. And then down on the right-hand side of this graphic, we see a very big shift of executives having the business impact to a damage to their reputation, loss of customer confidence, loss of the customer in total, and then 25% of lost sales. So yeah, these failed virtual meetings do have a really big impact on businesses. So now that we've looked at this, which of the following do you think you would have the biggest impact on improving the quality of virtual meetings, and why? Well, 19% of people think that it's video-based. 81% of people believe it's audio-based. So we do have a huge bias here of people really understanding and accepting that audio is the higher performing factor in a video conference. So now we've gone through how we conducted the research, let's have a look at some of these IT professionals' opinions. So we recognize that the IT departments are the ones who are probably in the future going to be responsible for budgetary spend on AV equipment. 74% of IT professionals expect to increase their budget for supporting virtual meetings. So this is good news for us, isn't it? We're going to start being able to ask our IT teams to spend their money on good technology for our meeting rooms, which is what we are all in the business of buying, designing, supporting, integrating, and generating our livelihoods from. But where does this 74% of IT professionals tend to spend their budget? Well, 82% on video displays, cool. So we recognized we've got an issue with our audio, but we're going to fix it with nice fancy 4K screens. Voice assistant, next up. Then control systems, speakerphones, so these will be for the smaller huddle meeting rooms. Tabletop microphones, ceiling or wall-based, cameras, there we are, loudspeakers, ceiling mounted microphones, and audio processing boxes. So 82% of IT teams reckon they'll spend money on a TV, whereas only 30% even know about the necessity to buy a DSP box or invest in some technology that can enhance their audio experience. So I've added some additional little bits of information here to try and break down where some of these audio challenges sit and how we might address them individually. Let's first look at background noise. Reminder that 51% of people flagged this as an issue. Can we move on? There we are. So background noise typically is broken down into unwanted frequencies entering your microphone, in addition to the frequencies that you do want, which is clearly the people talking their voices. So we can split these up into static predictable frequencies. This would be air conditioning, projector fans, urban rumble, that kind of thing, and unpredictable frequencies. If we can step through, there we are. So this would be things like paper rustling, crockery use, side phone conversations, traffic noise. So this is more like your sirens or people blaring on their horns, and sound from adjacent rooms. All right, and we can better address some of these things with some of the technology that Shure have on offer, but not all of it, I will hasten to add. So next up is the difficulty in connecting to services. So this is where us as system designers can really start to open up good conversations with our customers. Why are people having difficulty connecting? Do your end users know which platform they're supposed to be using, which device they're supposed to be using? Are they relying on an in-room asset, or should they be bringing their laptops? Are they expected to be on video and or audio? What's the design of the UCI? What we mean by this is if you walk into a conference room and there's a touch screen and you're expected to intuitively know which button to push, do you in fact know which button to push, or do your staff need training? And what about platform updates? If everything worked well on a Friday and the system rolls out an update over the weekend, has that all of a sudden broken all of your hard work? So secondarily to that is system use. What about non-standardized UCIs? I know for a fact that we at Shure are putting in a fair amount of effort at the moment to standardize all the touchscreens across all our offices, so that if we have visiting staff from the American offices into somewhere in Europe, if they go into a meeting room, they're presented with exactly the same technology and exactly the same workflow, trying to speed up some of those difficulty in connection issues. Do you need to educate your staff in how to use the technology that you've bought? What about some more clever things like automatic joining? Can you schedule your meeting rooms to actually join the relevant meeting for you at a given time to take that joining step away? And then now, of course, we're all working from home. Do you have difficulty connecting purely because you're relying on coffee shop Wi-Fi or your home office network where your children are also trying to stream Netflix at the time you are pitching your business idea in your home office? What about echo then? I think echo is a really interesting terminology because it can actually relate to two things which can be fixed in two different ways. So audio system related far end echo really comes down to the idea that people say, well, I can hear myself. Hello? Hello? Yeah, I can hear myself. Someone's got a problem there. Or do you sound underwater? Have you got a lot of bandwidth, networky, a kind of glitchy, watery noise? Or have you actually just set up your system so that the echo cancellation reference feed is looking at the wrong audio signal and causing you a problem that you didn't need to have? On the other side of it, you've got local room related near end echo. So this is where people say, you sound echoey, you sound like you're in a box, you sound far away. These issues can be overcome by either selecting a different or more appropriate microphone, moving that microphone closer to the talkers, or acoustically treating the room so that you soak up some of those extra standing waves. Ultimately, if you're presenting in a reverby box, you're going to sound on the far end like you're presenting in a reverby box, and you cannot fix that with technology. You're much better off fixing that with acoustic fabrics in the room. So point 4 then, audio cutting out. Let's see how we can address some of these things. Again, is it audio system configuration related? So you might experience some of your people saying, I missed the start of your sentence. You cut out when I interrupted you. Are you getting inconsistent microphone performance? So somebody at one end of the table sounds nice and clear, but somebody at the other end of the table really doesn't. They sound far away. That could well be because they are far away and you're relying on one, kind of cheapish table microphone at the front end of the table, and the person at the other end is 4 times as far away as the person at the beginning. You can't fix that really without any kind of investment in additional microphones. What about aggressive noise reduction? What about aggressive audio gating? What we mean by that is the audio on your system just is absolutely silent when nobody is talking, which actually is really unnerving for people joining that conversation. This is something you can highlight very quickly by the far end people saying, are you still there? Hello, sorry, I missed you. This is typically, you've got too much noise reduction and too much aggressive gating in your audio signal path somewhere. And what about audio related issues based around the network? So some comments you might get are, you sound underwater, you sound like a 50s radio. Are you using unpredictable bandwidth, like in our home office situation where you can't apply some kind of special rules to the network traffic to make sure that the video conferencing bandwidth takes priority over email and other such data? And what about the use of narrowband codecs? One of my favorite troubleshooting things is when people say, your microphone sounds fantastic when we're doing a video call, but when we rely on a phone call, it sounds terrible. And then sadly, they actually think that it's the microphone that is the problem there. And sadly, it's not. It's actually to do with using narrowband codecs, which limit the amount of audio data passing through that phone service, which will sadly make you sound worse than using a wideband codec. And getting to the end, our 5th frustration here. Let's have a look at, we can't hear each person. So are you using one microphone for all room users? Are you using one physical unit that's got multiple elements that can start to beam steer around them, like Shure's MXA range of microphones? Or what about when one person talks loudly whilst the others are quiet? Have you set your system up so that the quiet people aren't even talking loud enough for them to be recognized as a valid input? And sometimes we have to fight against some of the audio processes that sit inside the platform conferencing systems that we use. Like, we know for sure that if you're working to the lowest common denominator, like Zoom and BlueJeans and Teams, they apply some very aggressive noise reduction filters and aggressive gating to the incoming audio signal. So it might be that you need to dig down into some of the advanced audio settings, and if you've invested in some a bit more soft touch DSP rather than these like sledgehammers that Zoom use, you can turn off Zoom's processing and rely more on your more natural sounding DSP boxes. So there we are. We've got 5 audio issues that have been highlighted. I've given you some indication of how you can identify them. Can we step through the slide, please? There we go. What if these 5 can be solved by dedicated audio products? Well, fortunately for us at Shure, at least, we have got products and technology which can address at least 3, arguably 4 of the 5. And because we are in the IT realm, most of these technologies have now been put into software that you can install and run on your PCs in your conferencing rooms. So many companies now are opting to use Windows 10 type devices for their conferencing rooms, taking away hardware-based codecs from your Ciscos and your Polycoms of the world, and relying just on IT infrastructure because that's where the budget's coming from. So at ISE and Infocom this year, we've released some new products to the market, which means that you can make a very lean, very good sounding conferencing system with not very many products at all. So our next slide here shows that we've kind of broken up the conferencing room into 3 different aspects. On the left hand side here, we've got our microphones. I think we can step through these just as a chunk actually. In the middle, we've got our PC, which is going to be hosting your Zoom, Skype for Business, Teams, BlueJeans call, whatever. And then you've got your output devices, which are your display and your speakers. And here, now with the use of IntelliMix Room, if we could just skip back to the previous slide, we can see here that actually this is all the devices you need to set up a good performing, good sounding, high performing conference room. You no longer need that extra box in the middle to do audio processing. You no longer need that extra amplifier to go from DSP to amplifier to loudspeakers. Everything now sits on an IT network, and this is it. All you would need to fully complete this system is a network switch. Now, IntelliMix Room runs on Windows 10 devices. So here we are. We've got a whole array of them. So it opens up your choice and your IT team's budget. If you are an Intel house, you can just buy Intel NUCs, install IntelliMix Room, and then off you go. Equally, I think Chris is trying to wave me are you waving me a flag to hurry up? I think maybe he is. I will rattle through them. So IntelliMix is our DSP suite, which allows automatic mixing of microphones, noise reduction, echo cancellation, and we have put these in-house processes into our dedicated pieces of hardware, our P300 processor. We've put them in the microphones themselves, so that if you are really trying to stream down what it is that you're using. And we've now expanded that out into the IntelliMix Room software. So we've got all the audio processing you need in a whole array of products, which means specifying, installing and commissioning audio for conferencing rooms becomes very easy, very quick, and by comparison to doing the same thing a few years ago, actually very cost effective. So 2 more slides to wrap up. What we were really hoping to do with the embarking on this research study was to educate AV buyers on the true challenges that the users face, which is relating to audio and conferencing solutions. So those same buyers can focus their investment in areas that will have the biggest impact on productivity. What we're hoping is we can prioritize their investment in technology and in innovations that improve the overall audio experience and reduce the cost associated with meeting room issues. We're going to try and encourage them to build out more dedicated spaces which are optimized for doing the thing that they're designed to. Why people have decided that building rooms which are good for audio conferencing but sound like reverb chambers was ever a good idea, I don't know, but we're trying to change their opinion on that. We at Shure are trying to provide training for users on the existing tools that they have so they can be more efficient in their use, or try and convince them that investing in smarter technology and equipment can make a user's experience easier, and it doesn't have to be really expensive either. And we're going to be exploring technologies and innovations that automate the tedious part of virtual meetings. So if we can skip just to show the overview of that slide, there we go. And then we've got a final slide here, which is a link to the full research study if you want to download it and read it in a little more depth, or share it with your IT teams or your key stakeholders or decision makers over what it is they should be spending their money on. And then hopefully everybody can ultimately experience better virtual meetings, seeing as I think we're going to be getting used to them for the foreseeable future. Thank you very much. I hope you found some of that useful. Some of it I'm sure you would have expected, but now we have at least some good data points to back up our arguments that we thought to be true for quite a while. Before I leave, I will say that we're going to be running some demonstrations and some more in-depth overview of how our products go together, how you set them up, how you commission them for Zoom rooms and soft codec clients. So come and join us in our breakout room at some point in the afternoon. We'll be running those from now until 5-ish. And if you have any questions, I'm very free to answer them now through Chris as the conduit, or you can come and ask them in person in our meeting room later on, as you wish. Thank you. Chris, I think you're still on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I'm alive. I'm back in the room. Thanks very much, Andrew. And I'm sure people will come along to your exhibitors room and ask any questions, because there was an awful lot of there that's interesting to study. And
yes.
I'll have to move on now to Jason from White Light, and we're going to start a different presentation, if that's okay.
Of course.
Cheers. Right. Jason, are you there? We might as well bring you on straight away.
I'm here.
You are there.
Yeah, absolutely here. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Very good.
Live from sunny Islington, just down the road from you.
Yeah, actually, yeah, we're not very far apart. Which part are you in? Just a bit further up, maybe? I don't know exactly.
Down near Upper Street.
Ah, very good.
Yeah,
high flyer. High flyer. So, Jason, I won't do a long preamble because I want you to sort of deliver what you've got, and I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know what it involves. I don't know what you've got, but I'm sure it'll lead to some very interesting questions. So do you just want to take it away? Jason Larcombe from White Light.
Definitely take it away. Thank you very much, everybody. If you can pop the presentation up for me, please. It's great to be here. I think this is either my third or fourth year of presenting at iAV. To be honest, I'm missing being able to stand on stage and bounce around in the usual way I do, and I wave my arms around and all that sort of thing. But the aim of today is very much to come with a very creative slant in terms of the presentation, to start thinking about some of the discussions that I've been having with people over the course of the last 3 months during lockdown, because there's been an awful lot of things that have come to light and come to a head in the fact that we're having to reimagine and rethink the way we're actually doing things. And one of the key things is this idea of being able to blur the lines between the physical and the virtual. Can I change slides, please? And trying to develop a new language for that, because we're all spending a lot of time in isolation, and we're spending a lot of time away from being able to have physical contact with people. And having physical contact with people is what we crave in our lives as humans. So we have to learn how to consume and experience in a very, very different way. And equally, because our world has changed, and the way we do events and the way potentially we might do exhibitions and how we might reach out to people will change in the future, we also have to consider how we might underpin this commercially, because it's not just about achieving the goals of the event, but also it's about how we as suppliers may well find a different way of using technologies to present at those events, or find solutions for new ideas at those events. And also, as a consumer or as a patron that's going to an event, they need to be able to get the information, the idea, or whatever inspiration from that event, from that exhibition, from that conference, in a clear and concise way that gives the organizers the ROI that's needed. Next slide, please. So just to recap, over the last 3 months, of course, we've spent our time supporting the industry, and we've been lighting up buildings in red and finding new ways of doing outreach that we possibly can whilst we've had the time, and rethinking what we're doing. Next slide, please. Equally, we've been supporting our community, and at the present, it's really important, as we know, this whole idea of togetherness, to work together, to work with our families, to make sure we're all safe and to make sure that we're all doing well. But togetherness has a lot of other senses and a lot of other meanings, because when we're dealing with live events, that's exactly what we want to be. We want to be together. We want to be in the same room. We want to be communicating and experiencing. And that's one of the things that we're struggling with. Next slide, please. We did manage to get out and do some work, which is fantastic. Well, this is the VE Day celebrations in Buckingham Palace, and a socially distant orchestra, a very stylized way of lighting. However, quite a liberating way of doing something, because a lot of the trappings of, oh, you always have to do it this way, and you always have to do this, or always have to use that technology, were removed from us. And basically, you could do something that's quite different and quite stylized. Next slide, please. However, this is what we used to have. This is what we're used to, the hustle and bustle of life. Next slide, please. And this is what we now have. It's all been taken away from us. The norms have been reset. And overnight, the way humans interact has changed. Next slide, please. We built an industry on this, driving maximum capacity, getting as many people into venues as possible, packing people in, large audiences, creating a buzz and a sense of experience. And now, next slide, please. And now we're here. We're all in thousands of boxes, trying to get our message across, trying to connect with others, trying to collaborate, and also trying to reset the balance of isolation. Next slide, please. Therefore, the population was forced into a digital world. And to be honest, it worked to a point. It worked because people started embracing it. And some of the people that I expected in my immediate family did, I was expecting my family to embrace technology. They stepped up, and we were able to communicate. And it's the same all around the world. We also became very creative, because when you can't do something, when humans are told they can't do something, then generally we try and do it. We try and find ways of making new connections. And therefore, a wealth of creativity came to the forefront. New norms became the norm, the expected way of doing it. But also our expectations changed. We were happy to sit down and watch an HD TV show 4 or 5 months ago. And now we're happy to watch an HD TV show with 4 boxes with presenters from remote parts of the UK all coming together in a very non-HD world. But that's where we are, and we're happy with what we've got at present. Barriers were challenged as well. We came up with ideas in our organizations and with our peers, where normally previously the result would have been absolutely not. We can't do that in our organization, or we can't do that with our brand, or we can't do that with technology. But now, generally the answer is yes, let's try it, let's do it. We're in a different world. Let's see what the opportunities are now with the new ways of communicating and the new audiences, and how we can get our messages across. Next slide, please. So we could communicate. but we couldn't communicate with a passion. And that's what I miss, being able to stand in front of somebody and have that passionate conversation. And it's that emotion which underpins an emerging language, which we're now having to consider within the AV industry. Next slide, please. If any of you remember, I think it was 2 years ago, I did a session on lighting design. And I talked about, that's my passion. And I talked about the fact that I saw myself as a lighting designer, as a storyteller, in that I take my toolkit and I take my ideas and I'm pulling all this together to convey that story. Well, if we consider that we should actually expand the term lighting design into visual design, because very rarely nowadays do I spend my time just purely lighting a stage or an environment or whatever, but I'm dealing with the whole visual experience, the screens, the projection, the way it feels. If we expand that, then what we actually have to think about is that AV needs to tell a story. The immersive, the visual world that we're in needs to be able to tell a story. Next slide, please. And just logging in your name and typing a password doesn't necessarily get your story across. Because the problem we have is that we're inside a box and we're very isolated when we're actually inside that box. Granted, there are some ways of being able to explore, such as video games that means we can become immersed in environments. There are VR experiences, but they're not widely adopted. And what's interesting, actually, I think, over the course of the last 3 months is that we didn't all suddenly switch to a VR world. We didn't, the technology is not quite there. And also as humans, it's not quite there. It's not quite the expectation. And I think it would be one step too far for us to be able to suddenly go into that fully immersive world. So there has to be something in the middle, something in between that actually enables us to still help get that passion across, have that interaction, still feel immersed and communicate. So next slide, please. So the barrier of a screen creates a disconnect that's wider than mere distance. Next slide, please. Andrew Lloyd Webber, I think last week or the week before, tried to do a socially distant production at the London Palladium, which from a performance-based point of view, it worked well. From an experiment point of view, it didn't, because what was missing was the interaction of the audience, the fact that there wasn't a large number of people in the space, and that the performer wasn't able to relate in the same way to the audience. And we struggle with exactly the same problems when we're actually got that barrier of some form of TV screen or some form of computer screen in front of us. Next slide, please. The word hybrid, that is being used absolutely everywhere to pretty much describe any possible event that's going on nowadays. Hybrid events, hybrid concerts, hybrid exhibitions. But we're still very much in an early stage of our journey in terms of defining what is a hybrid event, what is a hybrid exhibition, and what makes it successful, and equally, what makes it commercial. Next slide, please. But however, we do know that we have two audiences now. We have the live audience and we have the remote audience, and both require completely different styles of communication. And actually, the balance has completely changed in that previously it was about the importance of the live audience and the importance of the people in the room versus maybe having a camera at the back of the room and presenting to an unknown number of people. But that wasn't perhaps the agenda at that particular point with the live event. However, now the remote audience is the most important thing. And the people that you've got in the room are actually relatively insignificant to the larger number of people that potentially you've got online. So we need to find a different way of being able to communicate on those levels. Next slide, please. We also need to consider that the start of the journey is in anticipation. It's not just about what's happening at the event. But if we go to see an exhibition at a Natural History Museum, for example, there is a sense of anticipation there, sense that we're going to see something special, or we might well have researched about it beforehand, or we might well be going to see a particular artist at the Tate that we like and we want to explore and we want to experience. Or we might want to go to a fantastic new restaurant where, again, we're going to go and sample food and get a sense of expectation. The journey, therefore, starts well before the event day. So we have to consider how we might well deal with that within our event planning and within our designing designs for how we deal with and communicate and tell a story to the remote audience. Next slide, please. Once we're actually in the venue, then we're taken on a journey. We allow ourselves to be immersed. Hopefully we switch off. Hopefully we remove ourselves from our daily lives and can be transported into whatever world is being presented in front of us, whether that's in theatre or whether that's in an exhibition or whether that's at a concert, or to some extent, whether that's actually in a corporate environment. But basically, we love being immersed because that's one of the fantastic ways that we eat and breathe information, and one of the great ways that we learn, and one of the great ways that we get the emotion and the passion from the work that we're doing. So, next slide, please. So, as humans, we crave human interaction. We judge based on emotion. We learn very much by experience, and we see in multi-dimensions. Next slide, please. Therefore, it's not just about adding a camera. We have been doing hybrid events for ages, but we now need to work out what language we need to give and how we interpret this new audience that's sat on the other side of the camera, that's absorbing the information that we're presenting in the live environment. And we need to know how we get that information across in the most interesting, passionate, emotive way we possibly can. Next slide, please. Up until now, there's been an awful lot of new projects and new ideas coming along to create immersive environments. This example is an exhibition in Paris called the Atelier de Lumière. And it's a projection mapped environment where you sit inside and you're immersed in what's going on. You can see, you can explore, but it's a passive environment in respect to the fact that the information that's around you, you are absorbing, but you have absolutely no control over that environment at all. Next slide, please. The next step to that is trying to rethink that audience relationship. How can you turn a passive environment into an active environment? One where the audience can actually interrelate with the surroundings. This example here of this image is something from TeamLab out in Asia, who have been doing an awful lot of work with immersive environments that are very active and allowing the user to get involved. Where we are in control of our environment is where we absorb and learn the greatest. It's not new. Museums have been offering interactives and so on for a long, long time, but now we have to think about that in all the other areas we're actually working in the conferences, in the events, in theatre, and in areas where we're now trying to get across, remove that barrier of the actual screen and deal with this relationship between the live and the virtual experience. Next slide, please. We want to be able to personalize our experience. I use a basic analogy when I teach lighting design, which is that we have control of lighting in our own homes. And we might well walk into our front room and we'll reset a dimmer switch, or we'll turn off a little light in the corner of the room to change the ambient of the light, the light in the room. Next slide, please. And next one, please. By doing that, we are able to make a judgment based on emotion. We are controlling our environment to ensure that we have an environment which suits the way we feel at that particular point. Therefore, we're interacting with our own environment. And therefore, we want to be able to do exactly the same thing when we start getting into the event world. We want to be able to do the same thing when we're working on these meetings, these Zoom meetings, where we're trying to collaborate with people, and we're not necessarily having the level of control. And because the level of control has been taken away from us over the course of the last few months, we're now craving to try and get that back again. We're also interested when we talk about collaboration in the fact that we've got so many tools to use nowadays, such as Instagram and Twitter. In Asia, you've got WeChat, and unless your event or your exhibition is immersed in some way into WeChat, it basically has no substance, and it's extremely difficult to get the footfall and the interest in that. So, we have this new language that we need to explore. Next slide, please. a while back, I think 3 years ago, we developed a product at White Light called Smart Stage, and it's something that we've talked from a technical point of view a number of times over the course of the last few years. And it was very much, when it started, developed as a passive piece of technology, in that it was designed as a broadcast tool. It was designed to create a virtual studio, a virtual environment, but it was still very much one direction. Next slide, please. However, so, you know, it was there to create the environment, and it forced people to go, or forced designers to go digital, because it dealt with a lot of logistical challenges as well as a lot of creative challenges. But as I said, it's a one-way experience. Next slide, please. However, as demand grew, and this is over the course of the last few months, we started looking at that as a product to solve this issue with the language, and what we could do to introduce the remote audience into the virtual world in a way that allowed the two to react very, very closely together and interact, and place the audience pretty much at the center of the experience. And Michigan University wanted a product that allowed them to do their remote learning. And we stepped up with Smart Stage as an opportunity to allow them to engage with the remote audiences, as well as have a live professor delivering the lectures along with the actual remote students, who could engage, who could react. They could ask questions. They could also look at their own work and collaborate with the live user with their own work. They could collaborate with each other. And so it placed the audience very much at the center of the whole experience. It's not broadcast. It's not video conferencing. It's now a hybrid experience, because you're dealing with both the live and the virtual or the remote user. Next slide, please. When lockdown happened 3 months ago, everybody came to us and said, you know, we want to continue to communicate. How do we continue to communicate? How do we continue to reach our audiences? This is an example of the Methodist Church, where we've got a long-standing relationship with Central Hall as one of our managed venues. And they wanted to try and reach out to the congregation, but they were keen not to try and just do it in a one-way passive fashion where they were just sending information out or speaking on a Sunday. They wanted to try and do it in an interactive way. So we used Smart Stage as an opportunity to deal with that and to step up to that particular challenge of allowing the congregation to react with the priest on the day, and allowing for basically Sunday services to continue to go ahead. And there were a number of this type of challenge that came to the table at that particular point, where people were saying, we want to try and continue in the same way. We want to deliver our message. We want to get the passion across that we possibly can, but having just a simple screen doesn't really allow us to do that. So events could happen by using that particular type of technology that we're using. Next slide, please. Comedy was another one that somebody came to us about, in the fact that they wondered whether we could actually produce a comedy show, which would allow a comedian to interact with the audience around them, and allow the other comedians that were effectively in this comedy club to actually have their particular time on stage when necessary, and also could interact with other comedians within that space. So we invented and designed an environment which allowed that to actually happen. And the benefit on that is everybody could engage. Next slide, please. So we learnt the wants of this new audience. The audience that pretty much didn't exist before, because we never really had to do this before. We always had the live experience, and that live experience was providing all the energy and all the emotion and all the communication that we needed. But as soon as that's taken away, we weren't able to get that out of the remote, digital, online, immersive, whatever you want to call it, audience. Therefore, we had to look at what the wants of the new audience would be, in terms of versatility, in terms of trying to create a high level of collaboration, stronger engagement, personalization of spaces, placing anyone at the center of their own unique experience. We noticed also some of the big take-ups on this is it led to fantastic attention spans. Whereas when you're watching a sort of a normal Zoom seminar or something, you might switch off after 10, 15 minutes because it's the same thing over and over. By adding this variation, by getting people involved, it led to a long attention span, which aided communication. It aided ROI for the people that were actually using the spaces, and it aided the ROI for the people that were, or the companies or the organizations that were using us as an agent to actually continue to present their event or their solution. We also had an awful lot of metrics then, in that we could see how long people spent looking at certain things, what their attention span was, what they liked, what they didn't like, etc., etc. So we soon moved beyond communication and conferences and so on being something of this nature into providing this immersive environment. And this is an example of a virtual music festival that we did on Smart Stage, where the audience became part of the experience. And anybody who knows me knows that, you know, I'm very much up for the calls of the small live music venues, which have been struggling at this particular time. But the emerging artists have been equally struggling because they've got nowhere to actually play. And this sort of environment gives them somewhere where they can actually go and they can actually continue to engage with their audiences. A lovely intimate venue, but a venue that's fully online. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. We can also transform through environments. This is for Adidas. Retail, I think, will be another industry that completely gets reshaped as we work out what the new audience will be in terms of the shopper. It's less about going to a shop and actually buying. It's more about the experiential environment. Because you know, we are there, we want to absorb, we want to experience the clothing, the item, whatever it is that we're actually going to be buying. We want to maybe use it as a recreational period rather than actually a period of actually having to go out and shop, carry all the bags back on the bus, all the demands that go with that. So shopping is potentially likely to become a highly experiential process in future and change the shape and the way that shops actually deliver their information and sell their goods. Next slide, please. So to summarize, now more so than ever, the AV world is looking and changing. It's looking to capture new audiences. It's looking to break down distance, bring people together, blur that line between what we regard as the real world and that virtual world. But more importantly, it's looking to put the audience slap bang at the center of their own experience and give them that opportunity to control their own environments, to relate, to collaborate. Because that's what, once they're in the center of their own experience, then emotion takes over. And once emotion takes over, then you have the opportunity to communicate very effectively. Therefore, in essence, we are redefining the language that will enable us to engage on a new and what I believe to be a very exciting level going forward. Thank you. Over to you, Chris.
Jason, so much to talk about and so little time. You definitely didn't disappoint. I felt as though I was getting drawn in, just like the presentations you did live for us.
As I said, I wish I could have been stood on stage bouncing around because, you know, but you know, it's one of those.
Move.
You do, yeah.
If you're talking, I mean, people notice I gesture a lot because that's a way of getting a message across. And
yeah,
but yeah, your presentation in a way gave rise to more questions and answers, and I agree with you. This is a sort of a point where we are really just beginning to understand, because people in their, not only in their daily lives, but in our industry and everything, are just reacting moment to moment because we don't quite know how to move through it. It's
but I think it's extremely exciting going forward now. We know there's a need for change, and we know that language is going to change. And I think we as an industry have a responsibility to help shape that and help find out how that language can move forward.
Yeah. So will you be available in the exhibitor's stand during the afternoon?
I will definitely be going back to the exhibitor's stand shortly, so people can pop in and have a chat.
questions to ask, and it'd be great. So, that's an option. But if you don't mind, we'll move on to our next presentation.
Absolutely.
And I really thank you for that. That's really good.
Pleasure.
Creativity trumps everything. So, a very stimulating talk by Jason. I'm not surprised. We've had many discussions about that kind of thing, creativity, and really that's one of the things that we try to explore in all its different forms. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce and bring onto the screen Wayne Powell from DMB, Paul Marshall.
Hello.
Are you there? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And sorry, I've gone a blank because I haven't written all your names down in front of me. So rather than go scrabbling in my book, would you like to introduce yourselves? You must, please.
Yeah. So so I'm Paul Marshall from Recursive, senior technology designer. So I've got my colleague Richard Smith and George Roboz, and we've also got Wayne Powell on the call as well, who is from DMB.
Excellent.
We're going to do a joint presentation today.
Yeah, we're really honoured and flattered that you've gone to the trouble to do this for us. And I think I'll just save any questions if we've got time at the end, and I will just hand straight over to you guys, and you can tell your own story better than I.
Okay, thanks. So thanks everyone for joining us. I know it's a nice sunny day out there, so we'll try and keep this short and sweet. So we're going to give you a little sneak peek behind the scenes of a project that we've been working on for the last 12 months or so, which obviously started well before COVID kicked in. We've obviously been members of ABCF for well, probably two and a bit years now, I should think. So just in case you don't know about Recursive, we're a technology design consultancy, and we work in all sorts of on all sorts of projects and markets, and we've got a couple of strings to our bow as well. So we also do content creation in-house, and we also have in-house software development team for creating interactive apps, content management systems, and often pieces of software to bridge between different platforms. And we get involved in all sorts of projects around the world, from venues, charitable institutions, and immersive retail experiences. So thanks to Jason from White Light for setting that up for us. So we've got a few videos to show you as well, so hopefully they'll play okay. So there's a little show reel to start you off. So this project is actually based in mainland China, and we were approached by the client to create them a one-of-a-kind, real-time, immersive, interactive environment. And we've used a number of technologies in this project, which has been really challenging, and we've been on a steep learning curve. So this includes Unreal Engine and N-Display. And the brief from the client was that they wanted to create to transport the visitor to an enchanted world, and we've done this in a complex space with complex curves, with multiple edge blended projectors, motorized LED color changing crystals, haze systems, and also motion tracking, which also comes into play with the D&B system that Wayne will tell you about later. And the big part about it is to create a visitor experience and create a loyalty to that space, and to have a physical visitor takeaway at the end of it to create this sort of memory. So I'm going to hand you over to George, who is going to talk a little bit about the terminology that we had to go through, because some of it's quite new and cutting edge, as we said. So let's just hand you over.
Thank you, Paul. So body tracking is the first thing that I would like to talk about, because we know from the very beginning that body tracking will be crucial to our project, as we wanted to create a fully immersive interactive environment without any headsets or any buttons. We have developed in-house a very fast and accurate skeletal tracking system, which uses depth sensing cameras to create spatial data real time, which is crucial. And this spatial data then could be transferred to other applications through an OSC signal, and through this signal, what you can see on the screen as well. So that's Unreal and particle systems, lighting, and all sorts of different things. To render these visuals, we used Unreal, and I'm sure many of you have heard about Unreal, but I think if you can play the video, Paul, go through very quickly what it is. Unreal is a very, very versatile game engine, one of the most widely used ones. It is used with games, obviously, as it's a game engine, but nowadays it's also used for production in movies and television, architecture rendering, show and production, product visualization, and for AR and VR experiences on many platforms. And we knew that we had to use a game engine as the project demanded real-time rendering. And Unreal was a fairly good candidate from the very beginning, because it's incredibly powerful and added features almost every day. And one of the latest additions is actually N-Display, which very quickly became a core element of the project. So what is N-Display? N-Display is a method to distribute the visual workload over many computers which are connected through a network. And this allows for extremely high resolution real-time rendering distributed among PCs, and each of these PC nodes would render sections of the project, but then through N-Display and certain protocols, it would stitch the image together into a seamless frame-locked image, which is amazing, amazing experience. As I mentioned before, N-Display works very well together with different displaying and projection methods. So there is a protocol for simple displays or flat displays. There are protocols to describe very curved, very irregular surfaces or curved surfaces. It's really, really powerful. And so once we realized what N-Display is capable of, we knew we're gonna go down on that route. I'm gonna talk a little bit about technical and visualization issues or problems that we had to overcome. So one of them is the unwrapping, because visualization is a key part of the creative dialogue, and it's a huge slice of our job. So normally, when we visualize any content in 3D, we start off with UV unwrapping, but in this case, we quickly realized that it's not going to be that straightforward as it is usually. In case you don't know what UV unwrapping is or UV map is the UV map is a flat representation of the surface of a 3D model. And in our case, none of these were actually true, because we didn't have a 3D model that we had to unwrap, because it was a 3D environment, a whole environment, and we didn't unwrap it onto a flat surface because our surface was really curved. So we had to work out a method to represent the immersive environment and be able to project it back onto a very irregularly shaped surface. But at the same time, and that's what you see on the screen, we had to work out a method to capture an equirectangular image in Unreal, high resolution and real time, because it's not something that is currently very easy to do.
So realizing the complexity of the task, some of which George has just spoken about, we quickly realized that there was a need to understand more about how the end display treats the surfaces of the space so that we could define the projection arrangements and the areas. We also needed to define multiple camera positions which were used to map the projection surface for creating and calibrating the blending mask and gradients. We had planned to build this in a one-to-one replica right from the start, but it kind of all coincided with lockdown in the UK. So we were unable to halt development. So one of our team, Dave Yates, who's currently on holiday after this experience, built a 1:7 scale model of the space using a number of smaller projectors that he happened to have lying around. And he built this in his spare bedroom. We ensured that the scale model, by its nature, it had to be the exact same shape really, and as accurate as it possibly could be to the final space. So so that we could treat it in the same way really, and develop some of these techniques. And some of those we needed to include the development and understanding of UVs, as George has already said, projectors, the alignment of cameras, the end display cluster setup, and development of the end display config file, including a number of viewports and specific settings, etc. So it quickly became apparent during this process that we were kind of pushing the boundaries of what was possible, but we had a lot of active support and from Vioso, the Vioso team in Germany, who were providing that software, and they were having to sort of promptly change their software to manage the video element, and so that we could put it into the scale mock-up. And ultimately we managed to, by doing that and with working with them, we managed to prove that the concept was indeed possible. As lockdown eased, we were able to actually then move towards a one-to-one mock-up. We had to accelerate that process, so we'd obviously lost a lot of time and had relied on that 1:7 scale mock-up for a bit too long, really. But this allowed us to actually bring in the actual equipment that was going to be deployed in China for this project. It included Panasonic projectors and D&B loudspeakers, and Wayne's going to talk about the D&B element later on, but it also included motorized winches, smoke machines, theatrical lighting. There was a lot to make this a truly immersive experience. And we also had to sort of there was further refinement of the content and the projection mapping in this space, and the development and testing of bespoke tracking software, which we saw some of earlier on. So there were obviously a number of challenges, and we haven't got time to go through them all now. But there was most of the projectors were it was quite a complex arrangement. One of the biggest challenges was, of course, the global pandemic and lockdown. No one could have predicted that, and it created a whole load of issues with practicality of things that would normally be fairly normal and non-issues. But some of the other challenges, the designing and building of a cost-effective temporary one-to-one replica, it had to be done quickly. We'd lost some time. It had to be done relatively inexpensively. We had costed for this with the client right from the outset, but it also had to be deadly accurate. It had to be really kind of accurate. It had to be able to support the actual equipment. As you can see from some of those pictures, as you look up, there's an awful lot of equipment up there, not least the projectors and truss work to support all that. There were challenges with that, obviously with social distancing rules as well. But installation of the equipment during lockdown, even as restrictions started to ease, meant rethinking the approach for what would normally be a one-day task or a two-day task with we could throw bodies at it. We totally intended that the entire team would be involved in this, but that wasn't possible during the lockdown. So much greater reliance on a couple of core team members that were able to take this on. undertaking the complex scanning process using multiple cameras, and doing this on our own. Originally, we'd anticipated that Vioso would come over, the team from Vioso would come over from Germany. They would help us with this. We would work with them. We knew it was always going to be tricky and might need some tweaks to the software. So that was always the plan, that they would come to site for a few days and check that out at the mock-up so that it was all ready to go. Ultimately, that wasn't possible because of the pandemic. So we had to manage that process. They were remote over in Germany. We had to manage that process. The mock-up was built, it had it had no sort of network infrastructure built into it. So we were having to manage that over a 3G connection, which in itself was a challenge. The space was also served by multiple projectors, so each covering a separate section, which had to be combined together, through the blending process. But the challenge in combining these sections into a single image was that fundamentally they were each a complex geometric shape and very different from the others. So it required different mapping settings and techniques and continuous development of the software and reprogramming of the Vioso algorithms. Rendering methods and frame synchronization, we had to, some of the techniques we were using were fairly new. So learning and understanding the end display config file setup required for iAV20, which is essentially the protocol used to describe the surface mapping. This is all quite new and developing as we speak. So there's little or no documentation or precedents to follow and learn from. We were sort of writing some of those as we would go, and putting them out into the community. There's also issues with different units and coordinate systems being used across the content and the modeling and Vioso software, which meant a lot of head scratching to kind of conceptualize it in your own mind about, what was the X and the Y and the Z plane, because it varied from surface to surface and application to application. So it became a real head scratcher at times, even simple tasks such as selecting a menu using a mouse on the display, because the X and the Y and the Z were not necessarily where you thought they were. There was also two really key challenges in creating the takeaway for the visitor, which was in the form of an animated GIF. So, essentially, images would be taken once you're in this experience. So ensuring that the visitor was facing the camera meant that we had to really understand their position from the tracking system, but also provide sort of visual prompts on the floor as optimum positions to stand, which is a common issue with some of these elements. It's about guiding the visitor. The second challenge really was about ensuring that the images taken were of a good enough quality. With all that projection going on the background, theatrical lighting, moving objects, through the winches, haze, etc., etc. We are working to ensure that content displayed at the time is suitable. So timing it with when the image is taken. So, making sure it's a good enough, high enough contrast and lighting the visitor in the right way as best as possible. And the challenges don't stop there. This isn't quite live yet, so there's some final challenges to meet. The client is already talking about future challenges. How this might be deployed as part of a wider rollout and maybe some additional features. So soundscaping. To really enhance the dynamic visual element in this environment, it was absolutely essential to pair it with real-time adaptive sound system, which could react to the user's movement in the space in real time, as well as altering kind of the internal acoustic environment to reflect the visual environment that's being presented. And we work closely with David Gregory, who's a renowned sound designer, and also the team at D&B. And we decided to use the D&B soundscaping system, which uses multiple speakers to create an immersive audio experience and allows audio sources to move in real time. But we used it in a slightly different way to normal, in that we were focusing on the tracking of a person in real time rather than the movement of the object sound sources. So this allows the video and the audio to be linked through the real-time tracking of the user within the space, which uses our in-house developed point cloud tracking system for depth sensing cameras. And essentially that stitches the cameras together. So essentially what you can do is triangulate the location and then use that feeds into the both the video and the sound, so that you can create it. And the cameras can be sort of, you know, out of the field of the projection. They can be above and to the side. And with that, over to Wayne, who's going to probably tell you a bit more about the soundscape.
Thanks, George, Paul, and Richard. That's cool. So hey there. Wow, it's such an exciting project, and it's just a little glimpse we've seen already. It's quite hard to condense it all into a presentation of any size, really. But they've generously and kindly given me some time to show you a little bit about the D&B side of things. Firstly, who are D&B? Well, we're D&B audiotechnik provides audio solutions. We're a manufacturer, and I guess there's a lot of manufacturers in this kind of arena. So, what makes us different? Well, D&B started life. Sorry, don't go back one. Thanks. Cheers. D&B started off life in the very early 80s, Mr. D and Mr. B. The concept of manufacturing speakers and amplifiers at this time was they should be designed in harmony. Now, this wasn't a very common idea, but it makes a lot of sense. Why create these two separate entities and then expect them to work together harmoniously and pull in the same direction? Next slide, please. So over the next 40 years, this harmonious pairing and working and design together has developed into philosophy, into a workflow to incorporate more stages, to elaborate more parts of the system and make them work in synergy. And this helps us create the same quality and standards where D&B is deployed. Next slide, please. So this is our workflow. So it's not just about what the amps and the speakers. It starts with a concept, with a design. Because we have high quality speakers and amplifiers and we understand exactly how they behave, we can create our own simulation software, which allows us to look at these designs and concepts with real products. The second stage is our control software. The R1 allows us to take those designs and start and deploy the system very quickly on site and take some of those design decisions to site as well. We have network solutions. So again, with audio and control kind of more and more prevalent with networking, we've added that and our DSP to kind of help embellish the overall network. And then finally, we get to those original products. The amplifier, I call it an amplifier, but actually nowadays amplifiers are much more than that. The D&B amplifier actually takes all of those design decisions, the speaker settings, the delays, EQs, all those design, all those the time we spend designing, and puts it directly into the amplifier, making use of this extensive DSP. And it also has stuff like system management and control protocols. So in this system where it's remote, we can all just dial in and just check the health of the system, the health of the speakers, and do lots of other clever things. And then last but not least, I guess it's the bit that everybody sees, the speaker. And it's interesting because everyone looks at the speaker and oh, that's the speaker. But it's from D&B point of view, it's the whole system. It's everything leading up to the speaker, including the speaker, that kind of ensures its quality. Next slide, please. So this workflow has really been driven by D&B's legacy and pedigree and presence in the live touring market. The need for sound designers and technicians to reproduce the same quality anywhere in the world, night after night. But it's really useful for us doing unusual projects and installations as well. Of course, every project is different. Even the narrative and terminology and the can become obstacles. The D&B workflow has been used on thousands of projects, from galleries to museums, churches, houses of worship, the Royal Albert Hall. And so what we find is actually sometimes it's just the language or the narrative we use, but actually intrinsically using this workflow can really benefit the whole project. Next slide, please. So, of course, we think it's great, but how does it help designers and consultants? Next slide, please. So at the start of this project, as it's like with the start of the workflow, it begins with our array calc software. Recursive shared with us some drawings and some initial ideas of how these spaces were going to look and feel. My colleague Andy Horsburgh and who's from our very clever education and application support team, quickly built this into our software, and we can start getting a feel for what the space might look and feel like. This is really important early doors. We've seen how complicated this project is, and now we can get an understanding of, hey, I think these speakers are important, but there's a lot of important real estate on the walls with the videos. So it's finding that balance between where the audio guys really want the speakers to be perfect and where they can go. It's all about balancing out the whole sort of AV conversation and making sure we maximize the audio experience. But we can start seeing, like, we've got the top view and the side view, and we can start seeing that immersive concept with the ring of speakers. And at this stage, it's really useful for us to start talking about products, where they're going to go. The two large grey boxes are the subwoofers. So you can kind of course, you can go big everywhere, but there has to be some balance. And this allows us to have that conversation with the guys at Recursive to make sure that it wasn't going to impede other design choices. Next slide, please. So we've created our venue and we've chosen some products. The ARRayCalc software also gives us a really good place to understand how this place is going to sound and feel, because the speakers are precise and well designed, and the amplifiers know how they're going to perform. We're armed with all the constants and certainties we need to simulate the room. We've done all the hard work. We've put in all the walls and windows and speaker positions, and this allows us to check stuff like sound pressure levels. So in this place, in this spot now, I can look at the broadband frequencies, for example. Now, I haven't done any tuning here now. It's just me to get a feel that these speakers will have a work in this place. And yeah, so next slide, please. And again, it's not just about the broadband. We can also check other aspects. So on the left, there's an SBL plot for 4 kilohertz. This is great for intelligibility. So if there's a speech, or in something like this where there's going to be objects moving and little idiosyncrasies that we want the audience to pick up on, it's really important that we look at those frequencies to kind of bring out that sparkle. But also on the right-hand side, we can see I've done a subwoofer, 100 hertz plot, and we can see there's a big hotspot around the sub. Is that good? Could be great. It doesn't really matter. It just means that we're aware of what our design implications are at this time, long before we put a speaker in the air. Now, of course, we can see that this is quite an unusual installation. We've got a ring of speakers and those sort of differently placed subwoofers. How do we manage that? How do we haven't got a technician or an engineer. It's going to be running sort of solo, as it were. So how do we manage that audio control? Next slide, please. The fulcrum of the audio side of this DMV system is the DS100 single leg engine. Excuse me. Inherently, the DS100 is a 64 by 64 matrix, and there are optional plugins for NScene, which is an audio object positioning tool, and NSpace, which is an acoustic room emulation. Next slide, please. This 64 matrix is fed by a Dante I/O, and every matrix cross point is loaded with level, delay. There's EQs and parametric EQs and notch filters. More importantly, in this situation, there's lots of control options like AES70 and OSC that can expand across lots of multiple platforms. So you're not just looking at one ecosystem that can drive everything. And then, as Richard touched on earlier, this really helps kind of balance with some of the video stuff that George worked on as well. Next slide, please. Cool. So just to dip our toes into objects and how they work. The NScene software calculates and accounts for all the time and level differences. So by positioning an object, in this case on a stage, and object-based mixing enables the creation of an authentic acoustic reality. In essence, if we put the performer on the stage, those speakers recreate the acoustics, the initial wavefronts that come from that stage. So to the listener, it feels like it's coming from a very normal place. Next stage, please. It feels natural. Maintaining the rules of precedence effects, or the law of first wavefront, it ensures that the listener has that spatial localization. So this means that the object stimulates the closest speakers, gives them more energy, and this kind of provides a relevant directional information for the listener. But this works for all listeners. It's reinforcing what would happen in a natural environment. Next slide, please. And this means that the perception of the direction of the object will work everywhere. Each object is processed in this way, giving every listener, if there are multiple listeners, the object the perception of each individual location. So this can be used to great effect on a stage where we have a performer, and instead of the sound coming from a big speaker on the left or to the right, it's coming from, feels like it's coming naturally from its source. But this is obviously a stage. How does that work in the concept of the recursive design? Next slide, please. Once we've done this design work in array count, the R1 control software looks at these speakers, and we can just move objects around the space, and they excite the relevant speakers to less or greater degree depending on their location. This means we can move objects away and create a much bigger space, or bring them much closer to reduce the size of the space, and all the speakers stay in the same static. So from a creative point of view, really opens up the palette. Of course, these pictures are quite nice, but what do we see as a user? Next slide, please. Going back to our R1 control software. So this is what the user can look at. Of course, the guys at Recursive, very smart guys, have created their own app and apps for controlling these sound objects using the OSC integration. The R1 software, we can create a very easy map, and these green circles we can see are our sound objects, and you can move them around in real time. Or in the case of Recursive, you can move them and record their motion along with the original stems of the audio content. It really opens up a whole gambit of creativity. So it's quite clever. I've dipped my toes in, but all we're doing really is kind of obeying the very simple laws of acoustics and psychoacoustics. This is very brief. Next slide, please. If you'd like more information about our workflow, D&B Soundscape, of course, I'll be hanging around the AVCF for IAV for a bit longer, but all our information is at dnb.com. How's that for timing, Chris? I've beaten him.
Can you hear me?
Hey.
He said, the host has asked you, I don't know, I'm looking at so many screens here. But, yeah, that's perfect. And I'd either say to you guys, either it's witchcraft or I just have no idea how I'm lost for questions. And we are slightly over time, but I just want to thank you again. Will you be going back into your sort of exhibitors areas at any time?
I'm sure we can be persuaded, yeah.
Yeah, because I've had a few people coming up with the impressive project, DB and Recursive, fantastic. It's interesting the project is taking place in China. I'm Shanghai based, so there's a few things coming in. So I think it would be good, yeah. So all I can say is just thank you for taking part.
Thanks for having us.
Getting
and arranging this event, because it's I know it's not an easy thing to do to coordinate so many different people.
Yeah, I feel as though the more I look, there's more screens around me and bits of paper. And I know what's going on.
And actually, what's really a nice kind of part of the conversation is I met the Recursive guys at an ABCF event, so it's a kind of a nice full circle.
Yeah, well, that just goes to show, and people like you are kind of sending the message on our behalf about what a nice thing it is when we actually get back in the real, and we're working to that, and that will happen, and that's going to be one hell of a party. So thank you, gentlemen, and we'll move on. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Well, that's I didn't know where to start, but in the green room somewhere, I think, loitering around, I would have Mr. Jonathan Cooper, who I've known a long while, who's going to give us a presentation on NEC. Jonathan, hello.
Hi, Chris. Hi. Yes.
How has it been going on? Have you been watching the sort of what's going? There's a lot.
Yes, I was about to say great project, Recursive DMP, and it's been fascinating to learn something about the audio world from my video perspective, and
that's right.
Certainly with the Jason's creative, emotional presentation from White Light, I think it's been a very interesting afternoon. Fascinating.
what I've always said is, like, if you watch a film, a Hollywood film, and you turn the sound off, there's nothing. I mean,
I agree. Sound is key.
Storytelling thing. Anyway, so
Yeah.
I'd just like to hand it over to you, if you don't mind, and because I'd
Okay,
rather
sure.
people listen to you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, again, to repeat what's just been said, a great event, Chris, and for Gabriel, from Jason Massey in the background, it's been really well put together. So, I'm Jonathan Cooper, or JC as they know me at NEC. I thought I'd give you an update on what we're up to, and some of the projects that we've been working on. My email and phone contact details will be on the last slide, so do please get in touch, and I really look forward to meeting people face to face in the coming weeks and months to get back to the emotional connection you have with people when you see them. So if we could go to the next slide, please. That would be good. There's like an NEC entry slide, and then the next slide. So the sort of things I wanted to cover today were an update of what NEC are up to in terms of market focus and product focus. Some projects that we've recently been involved in, which have used NEC displays, including a quick video of a LED installation. And then more information on the focus that we're putting on the leisure and museum sector. The other area where we're doing a lot at the moment is future meeting spaces, and I think a lot of organisations are considering using some of their space for meeting spaces and inviting corporates to use their venues. This was pre-COVID, of course, but maybe there's still a lot of opportunity there. And then wrapping up with just a sort of emphasis on quality, which is what NEC stands for, very much the quality matters approach. Next slide, please. So our market and application focus, we've sort of whittled it down, if you like, to six main areas of focus, as you can see on this slide. So if we go to the next slide, then I talk about large digital surfaces. We have a nice wide range of all the technologies at NEC, and certainly since we acquired S Quadrat, we've expanded our LED, direct view LED product offering, indoor and outdoor. And we have some NEC badge products, but then outside of those, we can go very bespoke, working with S Quadrat and their project team. Video wall displays, we're very well known for. This photograph was taken some years ago at the Guinness factory, but we still have a wide range of video walls and still sell a lot. Projection solutions up to 20,000 ANSI for a single projector, with all the edge blending opportunities that we can offer, and then single large format displays right up to 98 inch. Next slide, please. Second area, which I'll spend a bit of time, as you saw on the agenda later, is meeting and conference rooms. So these could be huddle spaces, collaborative environments, but again, projection and large format displays, we're pretty big in this area, and also direct view LED. Next slide, please. The area where, in fact, we've seen a 40% growth in our results for the last 3 months has been personal workspace. So this is the desktop environment, and we have a very high quality, nice range of products in the 22 to 30 inch desktop area. We also have a very nicely designed 34 inch curved display. Our newer products have also a USB-C connector, so you can charge your laptop separately, and also dual monitors. Personal workspace is very important for all of us as we're spending more and more time on these Zoom calls. So I think the the ability to change the height of the display, the angle, maybe turn it even into portrait is quite important in this new world that we live in. And NEC have some excellent flexibility in their products. Next slide, please. The desktop displays are used in a control room environment, and this is a growing area at the moment. So, so together with the desktop, we can have smaller focus spaces, maybe a 3x2 LCD video wall, right up to a huge LED collaborative decision-making environment. So in the Middle East recently, we installed a huge screen equivalent of over 50 HD screens in one. And the applications obviously vary from blue light, security, water, utilities, and data centers. So it's a big area, a big opportunity. Next slide, please. An area where we've been very successful as one of the key 3 companies with the TI chip, the DCI compliant laser projectors, more recently, is digital cinema. And here, again, big focus in our area for not only the projection technology, but also large format display and also stretch displays. So we have a 42-inch, what we call bar type, which could be placed above the entrance to a particular theatre to give key information so that you know you're going into the right film. Obviously, the cinemas are still waiting to really open up fully, but we have technology for all areas. Next slide, please. And finally, transportation, whether it's rail, air, ferry, road, we have lots of opportunity to put the appropriate display and offer these to airports. It's probably the best example of a company, sort of vertical market, which is really using products pretty much 24/7, and quality and reliability are absolutely fundamental. So we've got a EMC Class B LED screen on the bottom left of this slide in Swedavia. Again, information displays as you're going to the gate, large retail displays as you're shopping, and then an information LED poster on the top left. Next slide, please. So that covers the 6 main areas. Which projects have we been involved in the last 6 months or so? Well, I've got these listed, and perhaps Gabriel, you could start the video, please. What we're seeing here is a 137-inch, 1.5mm direct view fine pitch LED being installed by our partner in Norway. So they built the frame, carefully measuring it, and they put the modules in place. So these are 25 modules which slot in perfectly into the base place where the power comes in, and then lock them, connect them to each other, and then using white gloves installing the small pixel cards, and hey presto, you have a pretty impressive, large, very bright screen which can be used day and night to promote their digital art and modern art gallery in the centre of Oslo. So a very exciting project that we've worked on recently there. Okay, back to the other slide, please. The other projects we've done, Krakow Royal Castle, 11/8000 ANSI projectors, TV Museum in Berlin, slightly bigger projector. National Gallery have kindly taken 3 of our 86-inch 4K large format displays, which they have in a portrait format in their new gallery. We've replenished the video wall displays at the John Manash Museum in France. If you're in the Bristol area, We the Curious is a science-based centre, and we've finishing the installation of a 6.6 metre by 3.5 metre outdoor LED screen. PCAP interactive touch for Ulster Museum, and then our Broth Abbey, Dorset County Museum, and in fact also the Imperial War Museum are taking our product. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned in the agenda, we decided to put a lot of focus on the leisure and museum markets. It's been very good to NEC over the years, and a lot of companies have invested in our products. Certainly we're spending more and more time in this area. Next slide, please. So these are the sub-verticals that we're focused on. Museums, conference centres, amusements park. Next slide. And a number of others, as you can see here, which are sort of all the non-business-to-business type operations where leisure or some kind of group experience is involved. Each of these has been tough in its own way, obviously, with lockdown, and some will come out of lockdown better than others. But it's this is the main focus of our business, and we're keen to understand from each of these what sort of products you need for your needs. Next slide, please. What we're trying to do is to find products that complement the art and the experience, and also recognising social distancing, so using displays to remind people that they need to keep the distance from each other, but hopefully enhancing the experience of the visit. Touch screens, a lot of discussion on that, but certainly in discussions I was having earlier, a number of museums have invested in touch, and they're going to continue to use it. They'll just add the ability to clean your hands and refresh the screens and keep them well clean as the organisations are open. And there is a video online about how best to do that. Next slide, please. High resolution experience. So with our 4K displays and projectors, we can really offer a good tool to display your artifacts and your displays. And on the right hand side, we've got this new LED digital poster to remind people to socially distance. So this is absolutely portable, you can carry it, it's got activities, so it's a good product. Next slide, please. In addition to that, we've got a blog, so if you go on our website, you'll find a few words that I put together with some friends and colleagues about the museum and leisure world. We're doing a lot of global webinars on meeting and conference rooms as well. Next slide, please. In terms of new products, we're keeping very busy. It's been a little bit delayed for some of them because of COVID, but we have a new 5,000 ANSI 4K projector, our LCD PA series, which are interchangeable lenses. We've got a new refresh of that product with black and white bodies, desktop, the options, and our large format displays will be refreshed with a new series, completely new design at the end of the year. And then with LED products that we showed at ISC, the 0.9mm and the super black version. Next slide, please. This is a quick picture of the 5K, 4K product. So we will be available with an additional optional 5-year warranty, 20,000 hours, but that with the high resolution and the low noise should be of interest to many organisations, we hope. Next slide, please. Coming on to future meeting spaces. Next slide, please. We've got products for the huddle room, the meeting room, think tanks. Next slide, please. And on this particular one, we've got a new product which is due out at the end of the year called WD551 currently. And this is a 55-inch screen, ideally to be used with Microsoft Teams. So that's what it's focused on. So the display will recognize you when you come into the room, connect up, it will immediately take the content, and you can start your discussions very, very quickly. Next slide, please. So 400 candela brightness, it's got active pens, 4K camera, very good microphone, and state-of-the-art interfaces. Next slide, please. We've got products for the huddle room, the meeting room, user-friendly control buttons, and sensors are built into this. Next slide, please. A number of the applications that you could use this product with. Next slide, please. The other product that we are now into our second series is the Infinity board. So 2.1, so 55, 75 and 86-inch displays. And the product includes a i7 slot-in PC. It's got pre-installed installations, quick launch to enable you to get into your video conferencing meetings very quickly, and a very good Huddly IQ camera. Next slide, please. If we compare the 55-inch Infinity board with the 55-inch WD551, I'm not sure if you can read that, but the MSRP of the Infinity board is about €9,500. The WD551 will be €5,500. The WD551 is a Microsoft Teams solution, whereas the Infinity board is an open platform with all the added benefits that I explained earlier. So we've got quite a range of options there. Next slide, please. The last bit of the meeting room bit is a room management service. So if you're using multiple rooms, you'll be able to get analytics and information on the utilization of these displays, which video conferencing solutions are being used, and the duration of the meetings and number of people, etc. Next slide, please. This could be extremely useful to evaluate and optimize your real estate investments and get a real good idea of the asset status and help decision making. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So more than ever, we think quality matters. Wide range of products with all the solutions for mounting and all the backup services for service and warranty and everything you expect from NEC from the past. Next slide, please. And what sets us apart, we have a strong focus on visual quality to make sure that the brightness is good, the anti-reflection, the haze is particularly important on our large format displays. Customized functionality, so integration functions and also heat management. And we've got a separate document on the importance of metal casings as opposed to plastic casings. Next slide, please. So this is just a snapshot of the plastic or metal when peace of mind is top priority. So in key situations, you have to have the most reliable, safest product in your offices or museum or whatever. Next slide, please. Fit for purpose. Don't use chopsticks to eat soup. It's not something I came up with, but I think it's very sums it up quite well actually in terms of making sure that the products you are using achieve what you want them to achieve. So again, we have a blog on a bit more information on our thoughts on that topic. Next slide, please. So that was a quick update from NEC. Thank you for listening, and as I say, I look forward to seeing you face to face at some time soon. So I'll hand back to Chris. Thank you.
Jonathan, another extremely good talk, full of facts.
Thank you.
Am I coming through to you? Yes, I think I've
Yes. No, that's good. Thank you.
played this game with unmuting, muting, unmuting.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. No, that's very good. And are you going to be back on your stand in the exhibitors room at some point?
Yes, I've got another computer over here, and I'll link in that way if people want to ask any questions.
Because the talks, as they're going forward, lots of people are asking questions, and you know, they just want to come and talk to you. Actually, so although we're not live like we used to being live, but it's something, and I'm hoping things are coming out for it. So I'll scoot off if you don't mind.
I'll scoot off over there, then I'll leave you in peace.
Never, Jonathan. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
So I think you'd agree that's been 4 very good talks, very high standard, and some really sort of stellar companies involved there. And we're moving on. We got a little backtracked, but we've got a little bit of time. We're almost back on time for the 4 o'clock element of the show, and this is where we move on to the end users. We're going to talk to people from art galleries, museums, which is another area. So these are the people that are actually employing the services where they can of the people we've just been listening to, and depending on what outcome they want to do. And there's a variety and mixture, and some very big institutions are represented here. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start off, because I've been talking to him. I mean, I know them all personally, so it's great to have you here. And I'd like to start, if you wouldn't mind, by bringing Dan Crompton, who's the AV manager over at Tate Gallery, into the picture. And he's there. There you are, Dan. How are you?
I'm good, mate. How are you, Chris?
Yes. Is that a virtual Tate background? Are you actually at Tate?
No, I've got work to do. There's problems in the meeting room, and if I have to, hold on, if I disappear for a second.
Yeah, I can see that's actually one of those, the disappearing man. Very good. I just want to hear your voice, not you actually personally.
It's all right, I'm back.
But we're going to watch you now, because I asked you and I asked a couple of other people, and I don't really know what's coming and how it's going to stitch together, but all I can say, it's going to be very stimulating, and there's a lot of really good people here. So could you start us off by just introducing the video that I asked you to make?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, thanks for the invite. And as you remember from the emails, I was like, oh God, what am I going to say? So thanks for the prompt. So what you're about to see is a little summary of what we've been up to, but also some of my thinking about what we're about to face in the next few months. So I guess over to you, Gabe.
So here we are in the Andy Warhol exhibition at Tate Modern.
Audio.
And just to point out, Andy Warhol, years ahead of his time, invented the COVID hairdo. And here are 3 examples of very carefully crafted COVID hairdos, and Andy himself. So thank you, Andy, for setting that up. So what have we been up to for the last 3 weeks, in fact? Well, preparation for reopening the galleries. And that preparation has been very complicated, given a few factors. Obviously, COVID safety, number 1, and working around how we're going to accommodate our audiences, how our technicians and all our staff are going to work in a COVID-safe way. Secondly, planning slowdown, because people working from home and not able to bump into each other in the corridors. And finally, safety concerns. And what that really means when it varies from we're working to government guidelines all the way through to the very personal and deep and valid concerns of individual staff members and our guests and visitors and the general public. So what's the main challenge? Well, the main challenge, I think, is how to balance the very mechanical needs of a big organisation with the very human needs of audiences, staff and artists, our 3 main demographics. In respect of AV for Tate, this is my job to reconcile the technical, the logistic, the procedural side of what we do with the human, the aspirational and the emotional side of what people do. And to do this, well, I've got to be a lot of different things. I've got to be the boss, I've got to be the older brother, somehow I've got to be the competent bureaucrat, I've got to be the diplomat, I've got to be the artist technician. And this last one is really where I come from at root, from my childhood really, and my background, which I won't blabber on about, but that's kind of who I am and how I got to be here. Our mission, Tate's mission broadly, is to champion art and artists. Our teams serve this technically, that is to say with hard technology, the cameras, the mixers, the audio equipment, the technology that we do this with, but also the soft tech, the people, my team working with me right now to do this. We're working on a test for a gallery recording, and I'm taking advantage of the system to record this bit of video for the forum. But reconciling this with the inevitable procedural needs of a large organisation is very challenging. In small institutions, like an artist studio or a small gallery, I think this is done by unifying all of the team, but there are only 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of us in a situation like that, unifying those people as a family. But in large ones, like the Tate, well, frankly, there's no rule book on how to break the rules. And I believe the biggest impact of all of this is in the fields of diversity and inclusivity. And I think it informs terms that are quite current at the moment, such as institutional racism, and what that really means, the impact that has on human beings. It's not just that example, it's all of the wide range of inclusivity issues that we've got to deal with. So LGBTQ, women's rights, and all other marginalized groups and individuals, how we bring them in a meaningful way to what we do in a big institution like this. If we're dealing with the challenges that we're dealing with day to day, and very especially in terms of reopening under COVID, for me and my team, that's a big concern. How do we do that in such a way not to trample on people? To defeat this, I believe, isn't procedural. In fact, and in practice, it's about breaking rules that are anti-diverse. Tate seeks to lead on this, and so I believe we have an inherent conflict at our heart as a big institution. But interestingly, I think, that conflict reflects exactly the challenges of 20th and 21st century art and artists. So in many ways, I think I'm in an appropriate place to look at those questions, but also not to forget what we're up to in every action and every planning decision and preparation process that we're looking at as we're about to reopen. So that's just a little bit of a view of what we're up to in coming back to opening to the public and reviving this place. How we're working on it, my perspective on that is as an AV manager, but also some of the big picture stuff that relates to. I don't have the answers, but I hope I've framed some of the questions that we might have a little chat about now. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Dan. What do you mean you don't have the answers? Because I thought we could just wrap this up and you'd be, you know.
Well, I'm a white bloke, so I can't answer for the black experience. I'm a bloke, so I can't answer for the woman's experience. The point is we need those voices as part of the conversation.
Yes, very true. And also my overriding thought there was that you're in an empty Andy Warhol exhibition on your own, doing your kind of pitch for being the next broadcaster on television. Once you've, I think.
Yeah, I need to stop flapping the paper around because it messes up the audio.
But you've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, which is common to some of the people who are going to come on. It must be an awful. When did you actually get back to Tate itself, the actual physical building?
So we, most of my team went on furlough, like thousands, millions of others. I brought them all back from July 6th. We had a very, very staged, very cautious return to galleries in small groups. My team is 12 permanent staff. So gently brought them back in from July 6th. And then from then till, in fact, Monday just gone, we opened 27th. We just basically, we had a lot to do to revive the systems. One thing, like you saw from that, was video, to check and test our video resource and knowledge, because that's becoming massive suddenly, as has come up in some of the presentations earlier already. So looking ahead to live streaming and interactive with social media events coming up, hopefully. So really, but for me, People Not Boxes, AVCF, it was much more about bringing people out of their bubbles, is that the right phrase, and into our, I don't know what this is, huge mega bubble.
Well, thank you for your input just there. And what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is I'm going to call someone else in now, which is another art gallery, really, a very famous institution. And I wondered if Benji Fox, who's the AV manager at Royal Academy, would like to come on and join me now. And I'd just like to sort of ask him a couple of questions. Benji, hello.
Hi, Chris. Hello. How you doing?
That's a very impressive technical background, and I don't think that's real, isn't it?
It is real, yeah. I feel slightly embarrassed not having a flashy background. Yeah, this is my studio attic, which became very important in lockdown.
Right, yeah. So have you been running things remotely, or have you been away from the building?
We were away for the building totally for 3 months, yeah.
Right, but now you're back at some points. It's open to the public at the moment, the Royal Academy, yes? We're
back, yeah. We're just looking actually to open into what we're calling phase 2 next week. So more of the building is open, but we've been taking it very, very carefully, obviously. And a lot of that has to do with the physical restrictions of grade 2 listed building and, you know, quite small corridors and things like that. But then also with the galleries themselves, we had strict plans that have been moved forward, been quite flexible. But how that relates to AV has been sort of quite complex to put back together. And we're still working that out, actually. The majority of my team's still furloughed.
So it's a difficult one, but you have a slightly different funding model from other places, because the Royal Academy has it's actually on its own, isn't it? It's not a government funded building.
It's not, no. Yeah, it's it's completely self-funded. It's a charity, but I think the funding model is based around our friends' structure, which is unique and I think leading in many ways, and that's good. And obviously over this period, we've been you know, unsure how it would be affected, if that funding model would be still present. And I think it's still there, and the response as the building's been opened has been great, although, you know, much reduced footfall.
Right.
Yeah,
I can see it's the same all over, I think. But have you had much input into what's going on? Because obviously friends organisations are important for a lot of museums, galleries and heritage institutions. Have you had any feed into what's going on behind the scenes? Like, I know you're very big into doing podcasts and video things for the friends of the RA, for example. Has there been a lot going on in the background, communication wise?
There hasn't been. In fact, it's starting to come in. Running hybrid events at the moment is the hot topic, and
Yeah.
frustratingly, I think we could have been further ahead. We had plans with, just a bit of a background with the Royal Academy. We opened 2 years ago and doubled the size of the campus, effectively doubled the exhibition space, but also opened up our beautiful lecture theatre, and had a different way of engaging audiences. And part of that installation and the infrastructure of the lecture theatre suited live streaming and video really well, and the base is there. But the one frustration is that we didn't have the products and the kit that we needed to be able to live stream ourselves. So the old model, we had at quite considerable expense companies providing live streaming services.
Yes.
And part of that has to do with the profile of the events that we were running, but also as an AV manager, it's a frustration that we couldn't do it at our own feet, on our own feet. However, now we're having to look at budget and being able to produce those sorts of events. And I'm confident we can deliver, but we sort of missed the run up to delivering that with confidence and with experience for the team, which is really what I'm more interested in. I know the technical side will be able to deliver, but and it feels like that run up, that time has just been greatly reduced. There's a rush now to deliver that sort of stuff.
Well, please stay with us, because my intention is to eventually build up a little mosaic here where we can all sort of talk to each other in a sense and ask questions, things that come forward. And what I wanted to do now is to bring back someone who first time here for AVCF, but a person I've known for a few years, and that's Sian Toogood from the British Museum. So I wondered, Sian, if you're around, whether you'd, oh, there you are.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. It's strange days.
I bet. So are you actually back in the building now, or do you go in? What's your situation personally at the moment?
Well, this is my living room, but I have been back.
Cleaned up the office and made it different, you know.
Yeah, it's a woman's touch, that hobbit hole that we live in.
It was an improvement already.
No, so I have been back in the museum quite a few times actually, but not back on a day-to-day basis. And I don't imagine that we'll be back regularly this year. Maybe, I don't know. It's very touch and go. Who knows what's going to happen? But it wouldn't surprise me certainly to not be back in the museum daily in 2020. The reason I've had to go back in is that this situation has called for a little bit of filming on site.
Yes, I agree.
Has been surprising, and also, and I think it sort of touches on what Benji was saying, was that the museum in some ways was really well prepared for this situation, and in some ways really not prepared. So things like a digital archive of all our footage that you can access remotely is not something that the museum had access to. So I've had to literally go in with a hard drive and pick some stuff up. But yeah, it's
such a huge place with so many disparate galleries and everything. And actually it's different from, although we've got a department of prints and drawings there, and you've got the art side of things, it's more, you know, as it was once described, you know, all the world under one roof. I mean, a lot of things are there. So that's a massive task. And it's a much bigger building than a lot of places. I'm just thinking, actually, it's kind of the core of Bloomsbury, because if ever there was an effect on the surrounding world, that's it. I mean, I know a person who was a taxi driver, or is still a taxi driver, used to go to Bloomsbury and the Royal Academy and actually, as you get towards, everything's really quiet.
And
it just shows how institutions feed into that.
Yeah, certainly when I've been going in, and I've tended to walk home from the museum, walking around those streets, there's not the major hum that you would expect. So, and it's the same for places like the National Gallery. You know, even Trafalgar Square isn't, you know, as busy as you would expect in June, July, August. Well, not August yet, but you know what I mean.
Sorry, no, carry on, Sean. Carry on.
I was just, you know, it's amazing the difference that these kind of nodes in London's network, you know, them being closed has made a huge difference, I think, to the surrounding communities. And I was actually struck by, in the film, you know, watching that and thinking, when was the last time I was in Tate? And, oh, I really wanted to see that. And, oh, yes, you know, you even get that kind of sense of space and smell. And it's probably the wrong crowd to say it to, but, you know, a video, while it calls up a lot of that stuff, it doesn't do the same job.
No, you've actually, I think we're all hoping. I mean, on my brief forays down into town when I've gone for a walk and I've headed towards Bloomsbury, apart from that first night that everybody was unleashed into the streets, everything's very quiet still. You know, I used to like to have a cup of coffee in Russell Square. I mean, the cafe's still open and there are people around, but it's the closer I walk to the centre of town, it's almost the quieter it gets in many ways. So it's that's a challenge on all different levels, not just audio visual or IT or broadcast. That's a real effect for people. So, you know, I look forward to getting back to that thing where we can meet, because that's really what we do. We meet up and sort of have different sort of get-togethers and stuff. But thank you. If you stay with us for a little while, we're going to bring everybody back into and have a little discussion. Gesturing madly here. What I'd like to do is I would like to call on someone who, again, is an art gallery. And I'm looking for someone who, have we got anybody from the National Gallery here?
Yes, you do.
Oh.
Hi.
John
How you
Sheridan,
doing, Chris?
is AV manager at the National, and you are a really well-known major. Obviously, I state the obvious. I'm always stating the obvious. You know, the country looks to you sometimes to come to the National Gallery and the Portrait Gallery when it was open. But how have you found it, sort of flying the flag for your things behind the scenes, for your team and what you supply? And then, you know, obviously Beth and Gus the cat are very big stars. I've been watching that.
So yeah, well, there's a new episode for you today, Chris. I've madly finished the last bit of post-production yesterday and it got launched this morning. So you can go looking on the National Gallery YouTube
Brilliant,
page,
yeah.
find the new episode.
Some broadcast channel is going to steal her and her cat away from you. I can
Yeah, any day. Yeah, apparently we were the last gallery and museum to shut down. I think it was the 18th of March. Apparently other places had shut down before that. I think there was at the time there was maybe a bit of pride amongst the decision makers that we would stay open the longest. I'm not sure how real that is. But the claim that we were trying to make was that we were going to be the first gallery museum to reopen again. And I think we were beaten to first post by the National Army Museum.
Yeah.
So that's the claim was changed to the first national major art museum to reopen.
No. So I think you've put together a little film for us, a small.
Well, it's a kind of a short edit of one of the first jobs that we did when we went back into the gallery and preparing for the reopening was to shoot a package of B-roll footage for press to show all the changes that had been made around the building. So you'll see lots of screens and barriers and signage and social distancing stickers. The gallery introduced new art routes where you had to pick a route and kind of stick to it. You could do all 3 of the routes, but it was definitely a sort of one-way system that was put in place in the gallery. In terms of AV, we didn't have to make a lot of changes. We don't have a lot of interactives. We don't have touch screens and things like that to deal with. So there was none of that consideration. It was very much about signage and layout and capacity. The Titian exhibition there had only been open for 2 or 3 days before it had to shut down. So there was AV in there that we had to go and blow all the dust off and get that restarted. But yeah, most of the things that we've sort of adapted to really have been the working from home, as with everybody else. We had to relocate all our computers and edit systems, decide who was taking what with them, Teradecks for streaming. And yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster journey, but we sort of reached a point where we had done all that change, settled in. I think the gallery took a little bit longer maybe to start putting out content that was being created during lockdown. But the strands of content that we've put out have been really well received. I think they're a bit more thought through, and they've sort of taken off. And then now we're sort of back at the point of transitioning back to being mostly based at home, but having to attend the gallery to facilitate online things like live streams from curators doing tours. I could keep going on, but where do you want this conversation to go, Chris?
You're asking me. Yeah, no, I think it's so at the moment you're open, and obviously you're only letting a certain amount of people, so you can't be back at a full swing, obviously, because there aren't that many people about.
Yeah, I think that it's around 300 or 400 people allowed in the gallery at any one time.
Right.
And I think like on a normal kind of busy day, we might have 20, 30,000 people through the door.
Right.
So it's really, really reduced. The Titian exhibition, when it first opened, I think it was restricted to 13 people.
Yeah.
And they've worked out that actually it doesn't need to be quite that restricted. I think they've doubled the capacity.
Right.
And
you've got extra opening hours now? You've extended your opening hours for some things, is that right?
It opens later and kind of shuts around the same time.
Okay.
And I think that's just to allow staff more time to travel in on public transport without them facing the kind of rush hour. But yeah, that may change. Again, it's all keeping an eye on what the current situation is. It's all has the possibility to be scaled up or scaled back depending on what happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're all in a state of flux. That's quite obvious. And
yeah.
So I'd like to ask now, if that's all right, if Thea's here from the Wellcome.
Hello.
Hello. Would you like to come and join me? Yes.
Hey.
There you are. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. So a little project that you started, which AVCF are sort of feeding into and facilitating, like in a joint sort of venture, is a sort of a brains trust, but particularly focused on the interactive portion of having an exhibition space or a building or a space, because Wellcome has some sort of permanent exhibitions and there's an awful lot of interactive things in your particular area. Yeah. And how is that? But first of all, are you open?
No.
No.
No. We're possibly in the enviable position of not opening until October.
Really?
So no one's gone back to the office yet, but the plan would be to go back in September, and that's when we'll start making modifications to the space. So, I mean, this is quite lucky in a way for us, because it means that we can see what's worked well in other institutions. But it's also a bit scary because you have all these ideas, but then you can't actually implement anything. And I think the biggest problem with all of this scenario is that there are things that we need to change. I think Wellcome's taking a position that will remove all touchless bits of AV, but we can't do any user acceptance testing. So we have to have ideas, but then and implement them before we've actually meaningfully tested them.
Yes.
So yeah, we did have this group, and hopefully lots of you will be there tomorrow, where we can talk about what everyone is doing, what's working, what's not.
Yes.
A resource pool, I suppose.
Yes, that's right. No, because there's a good, like part of what AVTF does is like a knowledge exchange. It's just there to facilitate different people, different contacts. And that's very interesting going forward. Can you tell us, I was interested in the story because it's kind of theoretical at the moment. I understand the problem because you can't really do it if it's just, you can theorize, but can you, your curators, when you fed them the idea about using jack plugs instead of permanent installation, just fill us in that, because I thought that was a funny story that they suddenly thought it was a new idea. And
well, yeah, it's almost like going backwards, isn't it? So at Wellcome we use lots of, well, say for example our new gallery being human, a lot of that was about making things accessible in lots of different levels, including AV. So we've got lots of handheld speakers with integrated induction loops in them, and we did lots of testing with people with different types of dexterity to use them, and now we can't have any of these. So we were talking about using, you know, fancy infrared, or ultrasound triggering, replacing buttons with floor buttons. That actually came from Marco at the Museum of London. But then I think the uptake is that they'd like something really simple and something that's really intuitive and that everyone might know about. So I thought, let's just replace everything with a headphone jack as a joke. And they were like, yes, I love this idea. And then we're seeing that the Design Museum, for their dance music show, that's what they've done. So maybe because we're in this situation where we're limiting numbers, we might be booking people in to come to the museum generally.
Yeah,
we can ask them to bring things, or we can have a cache of things to give people. We also have to think about other staff. It's not going to be the AV team that are issuing this equipment to people. We have to think about our visitor experience team who will be on the ground talking with people. We need to make them safe. So it's quite complicated to decide how to proceed and how to make things accessible and safe at the same time, but also not turn anything off. Like the desire is not to just have a sign, I'm sorry, this can't work at the moment.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge.
Because it's a great shame. Well, just being selfish personally, you know, the Wellcome was one of the places we would have liked to have done an event, like so many other places, and that's the great thing, because people were always willing to come to places and meet. And you know, before this all collapsed, shall we say, we were going to go to WeWork, the Royal Geographical Society, the British Library. So many things were planned, and just as we're about to, everything stopped. And now you feel as though you're going to be a prisoner in your house, or houseboat in your case.
Yeah, it's on show.
I know, it looks like, I can't tell. I expected you to be rocking up and down, but maybe.
Nah, not really. Not the high seas. Yeah, it is interesting. I think that, like a few other people have said, there's this challenge of doing hybrid events now. So, you know, it might be that we run an event from a location, but that 75% of the audience will be online. And there's lots of challenges. And I think particularly for AV, when it's a museum, or it's a museum with also a charity element, say, there's just so many things to think about and so many different avenues to consider. It's been really interesting in lots of ways, the challenge.
And the other thing, of course, is that there's the short term and there's the long term, because that depends, you know, do you invest or try to get by on the short term because you're not going to, or do you say, you know what, we've got X to install X, go for that. But by the beginning of next year or something, it might not be the thing you want. So you've got that frustration of having the time to think and then wondering, I mean, it's so complex, really.
It is. And, you know, maybe this will create new innovations.
Yeah.
Maybe touchless motion sensors will be the norm in museums. I think, you know, one thing that we can all do working together is to try and come up with some kind of coherency for visitors so that they don't go to Wellcome and they're like, what's this? And then they go to Tate and they're like, oh, this is different. You know, the dream would be for it to be slightly more consistent, I think.
Well, I've invented something in the future because I've built a time machine during lockdown. It was a bit touch and go, but in the future, I've got a thing where you just think what you want to see. You don't have to have anything. It just goes directly into your brain. So I'll let everybody know when that comes up. Then you can sort of use that.
Isn't Elon Musk doing that anyway?
Well, he tries. I've met him in the future and he's mute. He just talks at you like this. Doesn't really, no two-way conversation. Anyway, I won't go too soon, but hope you can stay around because my intention is to sort of get everybody just individually, and you've gone already like a puff of smoke. That's good. And so what I'd like to do, I'd like to sort of go bold actually. I'd like to call, if I may, Joe Saul from the Science Museum group and John Harris, if you're out there somewhere. Is John there? Yes, I can see. Oh, Joe, welcome. How are you? You're muted. Are you muted? Has Gabe muted you?
He has.
We'll just stare at each other.
I thought someone was going to do it for me. It's I've got to press that button myself.
No.
Can you see and hear me, Chris?
Yes. Can you come into the? I'm going bold now. I'm trying to bring two people in, so our screens will get a little bit. If we could bring in John Harris, Gabe, if that's possible. Maybe not at the moment.
I can see you too.
He's got further to come.
Yeah,
that's true.
Long way up to here.
That's true. Anyway, before that, we'll
I'm here. I'm waiting.
Yeah, Gabe will get you through the invisible wall because I can see you on the preview, and then you'll come through. But yeah, because the reason I want to sort of almost get you together is you're challenging in a lot of ways is that you're running a group of people that are not exclusively audio visual. They're kind of a group of technicians that do lots of different things, because I know you both have in common, you tend to talk about steam engines and things and stuff like that. So you need someone who can fix a steam engine, for example, and know the difference between the different kind of connectors that go on the back of a rack. So that's something worth talking about. How are you approaching what Thea's dealing with the interactivity, first of all, of people that come into the Science Museum? Because I've always thought that is a big part of what goes on in the Science Museum.
It is. I mean, there's a lot to see in the Science Museum in terms of big objects. There's plenty to see without touching things. So there's plenty of galleries to enjoy, but we do have some heavily interactive spaces, such as our Wonderlab gallery, which is very much hands-on play. And we've spent the last few months sort of working out what our approach will be to interactivity. Luckily, a gallery like Wonderlab, where there's a lot of hands-on stuff, it is also staffed. So we've put certain measures in place. We're obviously reducing numbers, so capacities down to a third of our regular capacity in the building. We're going to be regularly cleaning things. We're going to be encouraging people, obviously, to wash their hands and use sanitizer. And we've taken away any exhibits that we think are high risk if they involve your face. We've taken headphones, earphones, things like that off the gallery. But for most of the other galleries where there are touch screens, for instance, then our take is that so long as we can clean it, you can use it if you want to. So we're not removing all interactivity. We're leaving a lot to our visitors' judgment as to what they want to interact with, and we will endeavour to clean it. It'll be interesting to see once we open the doors what the behaviour is, and we're going to learn a lot in the first few days.
And when are you due to open actually at the Science Museum?
Science Museum opens on the 17th of August. Lucky for us, the NHM and the V&A, who are obviously in our close quarters, they open a week or so before us, so we get to learn a bit from them, which is good.
Yeah, we've got Alex is here in the group, Alex Spreadbury from the V&A, so which has always been a bit of a strange place for me because they've been, I'm not quite sure of the setup, but I'm sure Alex will explain it. But here Alex is. Alex, welcome.
How are you doing? Tragically, this is not a green screen. It's my mum's spare room with the knitting and stuff. So
I think if anybody could see beyond the small frame we select for ourselves, either virtual, they would be absolutely shocked, because this where I am, it used to be my sort of front room, living room, and I just won't tell you, but it's become a repository of putting this together, and then other things. You just tend to put things, around, and then being a boy, you just never move them again. You leave them, and so you either go on a binge for 2 weeks. But anyway, so Alex, just tell us, because you used to work at the British Museum for a while.
I did.
Yeah, and you've gone over, and congratulations on getting to run the AV there. So what have been your challenges
with the current situation?
Yeah.
I would say the challenge that most people have had is working from home with kind of skeleton teams. So for us, all the technicians are still furloughed, bar myself. So it's been trying to plan things and work things out with no kind of other minds to bounce AV-based ideas off, I'd say, and I'm sure a lot of us have been finding that problem, and now people are starting to talk to each other across different museums, and I think that's going to help. But I feel maybe we've all felt a little bit isolated at points to what we're actually going to do, and there's obviously in these big institutions, there's mixed messages come, and this is an ever-evolving situation, and I guess trying to plan for what we don't know is going to happen, I think, is the biggest issue, right?
That's
one in life at the minute.
I know. And John, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Are you back in the building yet, or are you working from home, or?
I have not stopped doing either. So I was not furloughed, unfortunately. All 9 of my team were, but I have remained working both on site and in my studio here at home since day 1 of lockdown. So primarily I've been visiting our main site. Well, I've been visiting Think Tank to do really boring stuff like run taps and check collections, and basically just keep an eye on the building, make sure everything's okay. Water leaks is a big issue at that site. And then I've also been, I volunteered to do all the safety screens across all our 7 sites that we're going to be reopening at some point. So I've been surveying and designing safety screens, or hygiene screens, or sneeze screens, or whatever you want to call them, across all the Trust's properties. I've also been doing, similarly to what the last gentleman was talking about, I've been picking up loads of the stuff that I would normally give to my team. So, for example, this week I had to go into one of our galleries and take a painting off the wall on my own, with the aid of one of our security team, obviously socially distanced and wearing the correct gloves, etc. Because we got Sky Arts doing a piece on one of our galleries on Tuesday. So yeah, I've been picking up lots of bits that I would normally give to them. Next week I'm facilitating all our hanging structures inspections on my own at Think Tank. So I've got receive a genie and get them all up there to all the shackles and stuff that I would normally give to my team. So I think for me, again, echoing what my friend here was saying, is that it's been tricky knowing when to contact them and when not to contact them, because I mean, we've always been encouraged as part of the furlough system to keep in touch with our guys, but I don't want to bother them too much.
Yeah.
And I don't know the code to the padlock on the compound. I don't know, all the little nuances of the finer things that these guys do day to day. I mean, it's been great for me kind of learning all these bits and bobs, but as a manager, you don't tend to get involved at such small levels. But yeah, so most weeks I'm at one or two or three of our sites at least once or twice a week.
Yeah, right. Sorry, I should have mentioned beforehand, this is John Harris, who is up in Birmingham, the Birmingham Museums Trust, and we've been up and we've talked together about this year was meant to be, because we want to spread our base beyond the Southeast. So we were doing lots of conversations about, let's do an event at some point after IAV in Birmingham, or even before. I can't remember exactly what we'd planned, but that all seems like 1,000 years ago now. And
yeah,
we've come up as a group to you before and had a really good time. And we were trying to get people in that sort of area and down from Scotland and Wales and that to, people to gather in a different place than just London based.
Yeah, and I think we were doing quite well with that.
Yeah, it was
with that formation. Yeah, we were just starting to get some other interest, and then all this stuff happened.
Yeah.
I mean, where we are as an organisation at the moment, I can't actually tell you because we haven't released it to the general public about our reopening yet.
Yeah.
But it's safe to say that these are difficult times for us. We have entered into redundancy consultations.
Right.
And thankfully, my team and myself are safe, but it's not quite as good news for the rest of our organisation. And our reopening plans are certainly not as swift as what's happened in the capital.
Okay. Well, I'm aware of the time, and I've got a few more people to get in, and then I think we'll just have a general, what will be the panel debate, if you like, and some people can ask questions or something will come up between that. So what I'd like to do is, I know Jack Laidlaw is here from Middlesbrough College. Now, this is important because Jack is obviously educating what would be teaching them the skills needed, and there he is. Hi, Jack.
Hello.
I mean, you can explain much better than me, but you are, in a nutshell, I think, responsible for the people that will replace everybody here one day. Training.
No pressure.
No pressure then. Nothing. So you'll be going around taking a scythe to everybody, but not just
what a lovely introduction.
But I thought it was very important to get you on, because although you're not a museum and everything, you'll feed into everybody by your apprenticeship scheme that you're sort of getting together at the moment. Do you want to just give people a rough idea of what you're doing? What are you up to, Jack?
At work, what I'm up to is we're currently, I'd say, about 2/3 of the way through developing the AV apprenticeship standard. Its official name is Audiovisual Technician, which is going to be a level 5, 24-month apprenticeship standard. We've been working with roughly 30 companies, I think, on developing the standard. I think we've been going for about 9 months now, maybe a little bit longer. And yeah, the first part of the process was nailing down some duties for our apprentices. Essentially, what that involved was quite a few employers, AV employers, just throwing job descriptions at me, and then me sort of turning that into a broad standard. And we've made quite a lot of progress now. We've got all the duties sorted. We've got most of the what we call knowledge, skills, and behaviours associated with all those duties sorted. A lot of people on this call will know exactly what I'm talking about because they've been helping out. And now we're working towards deciding what sort of assessment methods are going to be in place. And we're hoping to have the whole thing wrapped up and ready to go early next year. Although, fingers crossed, it might be a little bit earlier because we're making good progress now.
And that's the hands-on part of it in a way, the education. But are you aiming towards a part of the program will be a distance learning thing? Is that where you're aiming for eventually, so people can learn these skills, and some of them, and they'll be backed up by practical, which is where the apprenticeship comes in. And I mean, that's a really good sort of, is anybody else sort of doing anything like that yet? I mean, I know there are different individual strands, but this really will combine everybody together because it's an actual proper standard, you know, with the government and everybody involved, the apprenticeship. So that's the long-term aspiration? How do you see it panning out?
Yeah, that's right. So the apprenticeship standard is validated by the IFA, who are the Institute for Apprenticeships, which are government body. So I'm aware that a lot of individual companies have had their own sort of training schemes that they've referred to as apprenticeships, which is great. But this standard that we're developing is a government-backed standard, which is highly needed because there currently is no AV apprenticeship standard, centralized one. So what we'll do as a training provider is we'll have a course which runs alongside the apprenticeship standard, has all the same knowledge, skills, and behaviors in it. And as you say, we'll deliver that online, although there will be some practical hands-on sessions associated with that as well. So it needs to be flexible because it needs to be flexible for employers and also for apprentices. Apprentices have an 80%, 20% split between their time working and their time being educated by the training provider. So 20% education. But that doesn't have to happen one day every week. It can be front loaded or it can be back loaded, or, you know, when it can happen whenever. And although obviously AV is a very practical hands-on topic and a hands-on area, we feel that providing as much as we can online is the best way to go, because that makes it more flexible. It just makes it more usable for the employers, more usable for the apprentices, and for us as well. So hopefully where I see it going is that this time next year we've got a bunch of apprentices at various different employers, all enrolled onto the apprenticeship and onto the degree program, and we'll make some good progress with generating some good young talent. Doesn't necessarily have to be young though, because you can do an apprenticeship at any time of your life.
I just say young because I'm feeling so old at the moment. Well, what I'd like to do, because that's very important, and I'm sure there are some people that are on this group here now that have taken people that have graduated from you. I think Thea from Wellcome has got someone, and Gabe will hate me for this, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to just bring everybody back, because I think it's nice to see everybody back on the screen who are there and haven't been bored and just gone off or been too furloughed for everything else. So Gabe will work his magic, I'm sure. And there you are. Oh, that's a mosaic. That's so pretty. It's gone. And is Benji, has he gone or is he still with us? Yes, I think slowly. It's just give time, I think, for that to slowly build. I'm a bit overwhelmed now because everybody's looking at me thinking, oh, I'm so outnumbered. I've lost my nerve.
Never.
Get to the Grant's whiskey, start early.
Hold on a minute.
I was just
You're
pretending
drinking.
that by the time we're at the end of this, And by the way, everybody who's watching this, I'll just put a little plug in. When we come to the end of this, we're going to sort of be joined by Liam Helm from the Royal Society, where we're going to talk about the Harrison Award. And then after that, anybody who wants to stay around, we've got the equivalent of like a bar. The beauty of this bar is that it serves any drink, any snack in the world, and it's all free for us, obviously. And Karen, who's been darting around, Karen Warden from the sort of RAF Museum in her Spitfire. I don't know how many more sort of cliches I can talk about before she just quits and goes off. But she'll be here with us as well later. And to be perfectly honest, I don't really know what's going on. I'm just talking a lot. So has anybody, Thea, if I could just ask you, how has your experience been taking some people from Jack's factory in a way?
It's been great.
Yeah.
So we've got Lewis Sellers working for us.
Yeah.
So he has started in, I want to say January as a permanent member of staff. And you can tell that what they do on your course, Jack, is great because he's come with a full broad range of skills and is just like raring to go and very capable of just doing anything that you ask of him. Very proactive and a very good team player as well. I would say that I've got a really great team at the moment and everyone's been working so well together, even from home or when we were at work. So it's been a very good experience. It's good to have new blood. It's good to have people with new perspective. And I think the apprenticeship is just great. And thanks to Jack and Graham for all the organising and all the work that you're doing as well. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, I have to say Graham Massey, who's behind the scenes somewhere, has done quite a lot in helping pull things together. And so that's great. And I think, I don't know if he's there, if he wanted to pop in, but I think he wants to stay behind the scenes, but very pivotal part. And also I'd like to thank him for sort of, you know, and Gabe behind the scenes for putting this together. Because I know what's going to happen is I'll finish eventually and go off into distance with my whiskey bottle and I'll forget to thank everybody. Just like when you're working as a technician, you wait in the projection box and you're waiting for, oh, and thanks for the AV guys, because without you, we couldn't have done it. Can everybody just stand up, please, and give a round of applause to the AV people? And usually it just gets dark and everybody's gone. And you stand there thinking, I don't know if that's just me or you know, that could be a common experience for some people. And how, have we got anybody else in the group that's actually using someone from Middlesbrough yet? I know the IAT have got someone as well, but they weren't available for comment because I'm not quite sure what they're up to. No,
sadly, we don't have enough call for AV as a specific apprenticeship, but we were because AV is probably about 10% of what we do as a department.
Yeah,
we were though just about to. Well, we were in quite advanced talks about launching 2 apprenticeships. One, the Steam Heritage Apprenticeship, and one, the Gallery Technician Apprenticeship, which went live this year from the same kind of background as Jack's from the government, basically. And it was quite an exciting point. And then it was like everything stops. So yeah, and I know Joe's had a similar experience with her technicians, apprenticeships.
Yeah, we were about to go out to recruit for our first apprentice, an engineering apprentice this year. And yeah, we've been working with a local college and taking work experience students in, and it's been amazing in terms of how the team have responded and them getting to mentor the younger kids that are coming in from college. They're just coming to us usually for a couple of weeks. But we got the team really excited about having an apprentice on board, and then we've sort of hit a pause. I'm hoping that there's going to be a mid-year intake and we might be able to get a bit of funding for it, but at the moment we're looking at next year.
Yeah, same with us. We're also now in a position where I don't know whether any of you have mount makers in your teams, which is probably Joe on this panel only, maybe Dan, but mount making, as you know, is a dying art, and my mount maker is 64 years old, and he's decided to take voluntary redundancy. So it's the perfect time for me to bring in an apprentice mount maker, but obviously with the current situation, that's not going to be that easy.
John, you just highlighted.
I pitch in, Chris?
Yeah, certainly, Dan. Sorry,
I think this is one of the major challenges we're all going to face. Really interesting, John, to hear of the challenges you're facing, redundancies. People may be aware that there's a similar story unfolding at Tate, certainly on our enterprises side at the moment. And I think the big challenge is we've got a situation where suddenly AV is in front of everybody in the world. Gabriel, again, I echo that, brilliant job as our resident AV tech for this particular event. The world, our institutions, needs people like us to be doing what we're doing. But of course, the huge challenge is the economy, what is happening to the budgets of all of our institutions and all of the sort of bodies, organizations, companies who might have given us sponsorship before, who are experiencing their own financial challenges. And then the challenges for young people, people coming on your courses, Jack. It's a knock-on right the way through all of our activities. It's a bit scary, but I think my last word on that would be, the thing about scary change is it's normal for human beings. That's kind of what we do, study history a bit, and change is normal. Change is the only constant. So really, for people like us, and the forum, Chris, this is absolutely a brilliant place for that, to share our experiences of how we rise to those challenges.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a kind of paradoxical situation everybody's in, because a lot of us are influencers both up and down in our worlds, but the executive decisions, in a way, I would say almost exclusively, are with the senior management, the accountants, the spending, and the economy at the moment is not doing us any favors, obviously. I mean, it will come round, it will right itself. It's like a ship, you know, in a stormy sea. So, and that's exactly it. The expectations, I mean, you make a very good point, John. It's like there's a person who has so much experience, and yet that may be lost because of this particular situation we're going through. I mean, I'm hoping there are other mount makers out there and we can spread those skills, but that's something that we're all juggling with, I think. And every single one of you will be doing things differently, and yet there's a common theme running through all of our sort of aspects of what we're doing. I don't know if anybody wanted to sort of, you know, ironically, we're in a position where we can influence more, but we may not be given the resources to actually go forward at the moment.
Before lockdown happened, everything seemed to be escalating and increasing. The demand on the team was just going up and up. We had a fifth technician approved and fully accounted for, ready for the new budget, and then the lockdown happened. Everything changes, the economy situation, everything. We had to reforecast. No recruitment. Alongside that as well, the gallery was really keen to do more apprenticeships. It had just started with apprenticeships. There was a big push from our HR to get apprentice positions. I'm unclear how that is going to be affected. I hope it isn't going to be affected. But then taking on an apprentice while we're working from home, mostly, how is that going to work? it's just a lot of things that are unclear. I think this hybrid event thing, which is definitely going to be a big push in the coming months, is going to involve possibly more resources that we don't necessarily have, facilitating live things happening in the gallery. Then with the online element as well, the spread of demands on people is it's going to escalate, but there won't be the same money to back up staffing. So yeah, it's a lot of so many unknowns, big unknowns.
I think that's a really big problem, because we'll end up supporting things that we never normally would have done because they wouldn't have had to have been online as well. And then AV itself can be quite a costly enterprise anyway, just getting the equipment necessary to do all these things from home or in the office, or the software, it all kind of adds up. So that is a concern. And it's an area that probably needs investment in order to meet the expectations of the business that you work for. So that's a challenge, definitely.
Yeah. And it's hard to get the right person, because it's not just technical knowledge, it's the way people interact with other people. And that's something you can learn to a degree, but it's quite difficult. The soft skills, shall we say, where you get to the point where you can lead someone to make some of their own decisions, that's quite difficult, I find, or I have found in the past, getting the right kind of people. And the second you've got more than one person, it becomes even more difficult running a team, I suppose. That is the difficulty.
Yeah, and even thinking about recent employees, I'm thinking about Lewis. He's going to be really embarrassed that I'm talking about him. But he's come into the world of work with an expectation of what the experience would be like. And then we've all started working at home. So there's all those experiences that you'd have when you start in a workplace that you might not be able to have in the same way anymore. And we don't know what next year's even going to look like. So that must be really hard.
Yeah, you need to have formed those relationships and to be able to rely on everyone. And then if you're working from your own homes and then thrust together for a mad event with loads of high demands, how does that impact on the team and how effective they are?
I see Alex at the V&A. You wanted to say something there?
I was just going to say, and I don't know if I'm going on a tangent, but you know, the first thing I'd look for in an AV technician is someone who can evolve to an ever-changing situation, and that is a real-world work experience example. Like, yes, this is extreme right now, but we need people who are willing to roll with the punches on this kind of thing. I mean, yes, no one's ever experienced anything like this before, but as managers, our duties first is the safety of our staff, and then to make sure to have jobs at the end of all this. And all we can do is creatively say yes to as many opportunities as possible, I think. So we just have to take what we can't do in the museum, put it in the virtual world, and do as much stuff as we can for membership and patrons and education departments to bring as much money in, which means at the end of all this, no one is going to look at the books and go, what are these guys doing, sat there doing nothing? Like, we'll cut them off straight away, you know? So
yeah,
we're so lucky that our job, that's what our job is, isn't it? AV. It's about
people
engagement. And
they say, we need something doing. I have this idea. How do we do it? And then we come up with that solution. And that's what we need in the AV workforce, you know?
Yeah. I think it comes down to that kind of hope for the best and plan for the worst, because at the moment we're going through troubled times, but that's going to change. And people, you know, everybody here and everybody, I've always said, the most successful people I've met have been the ones that can just problem solve. You know, sometimes you have to get something out of the old stores to rig together to do something. Sometimes you can afford to go to another company to install it, but you get around it and deliver. And I used to think you just deliver and almost by magic, but now that's changed completely. I think it's your job's to kind of make people aware. It just doesn't happen by magic anymore. There's a lot involved in it and a lot of thought, and you're just as professional as the other people even though they see you behind the scenes in a black polo shirt, whatever, you know, they need to be educated. So I think that's what I would have to say.
One thing to contribute, Chris, just a thought, because we're talking about our teams, and as a manager, I run a number of permanent staff, and absolutely agree with the creative improvisation point. But I just bring up our freelancer pool. So we at Tate do quite a lot of, well, basically our events AV, and we're all about quite performative, creative events. And I'm particularly concerned about the freelancer pool in the broadest sense, the entire body of UK freelancer, particularly arts and creative performance technicians. And just so from my part, just to add to that, in the same way that I'd be looking to my team to find creative ways and how to adapt useful bits of kit out of the cupboard and make them do what we need them to do somehow, I also am looking for ways to bring freelancers into that process as well, as a means of keeping their livelihood going to some degree, a very small contribution from us.
That's true. I think the model where you have to have freelancers every so often is a very important part of the way we approach this problem. And obviously seeing as Jacob's Massey is kind of helping me.
Well, I was paid to make that comment, so
yeah. You were paid, and I know. And like, even though you're just starting out, you're fairly inexperienced, all right? So hopefully we can get everybody back. Because I remember the visit to the Tate that you put on for us when, I don't know how long ago, 3 or 4 years ago. But yeah, you're always an exemplar for a lot of people. So,
well, certainly from our point of view, they bring two things: technical qualities, skills, and so on that I don't have within the permanent team. That they're in their various ways experts and very proficient at. But they also bring that human quality, that personability, particularly again in our field, because of just the nature of what we all do. Really, I think it's the sort of people that you meet in the AV world. That I think is so important. So I personally don't want that to be lost. I need to find ways to keep that ticking along until the riches are back.
Yeah, it's been great getting the input from everybody here. So seeing as there's a lot of us, I'm just going to go around one last time, and in a sentence, if you can just say to me each one, and I'll start with Joe because you're at the top of my preview screen next to me, it seems. Just one sentence on, and it can be, doesn't have to be strictly to do, but what's on the top of your mind as a person who's working in this industry at the moment, and just fire it out. And I think that'll be a good way to just move on. Joe.
Well, apart from worrying about the financial impact of this on our sector, I suppose the biggest thing that is on my mind is what we've been talking about, and that's the skills gap, in particular for STEM. How are we getting new people in? I've got 5 vacancies in my team. One of those was going to be an apprentice. Whether I will get to fill any of those vacancies in the next year, I don't know. But there's not enough people out there doing the kind of things that we want, and I think apprenticeship's a really important part of that. So that's the biggest thing that's sort of on my mind at the moment.
Yeah, was that just a sentence or was that a paragraph?
Sorry, it's hard to summarize. Okay, one word: apprenticeship.
I'm just joking. I know. John, quickly, you want to say anything? You just.
Which one?
Sheldon or Harry?
The good-looking one.
Sheldon. Don't be you, Harris. Is the one with the nice looking records behind him.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, weathering the storm, really, Chris. Getting back on our feet, trying to get some money from somewhere.
Yeah.
Which is the biggest issue for us at the moment. Diversifying, yeah, I could go on. Not wanting to dwell too much on the current situation, but my fears are, and particularly from what I've heard today, is that I have an aging workforce, and not all of them are that keen to be coming back to work.
Yeah, it's understandable.
In fact, I was supposed to have 3 return on Tuesday, and one of them told me today he's not happy coming back. He is not prepared to be in the building at this time for various reasons. But yeah, it's just weathering the storm, mate, and get cracking on.
Weathering
and
the
trying
storm,
to
a good one.
deliver something. Yeah. Get back afloat.
Alex, over at the VNA, what do you think?
I'd say it's turning a positive into a negative. I'm getting it the wrong way around already. A negative into not positive into a negative. Yeah, we're going to try and make a good situation out of a bad situation, and I think that
that's
this
good.
is a weird one, but we work in museums. We're used to coming up with creative solutions with no money. It's nothing unusual here. It's just a little bit accelerated.
Yeah. And where are we next? Jack, do you want to give us a word of wisdom, a sentence?
Yeah, sure. My primary focus at the minute, well, I've got 2 primary focuses. I'll try and keep this mercifully brief. One is trying to figure out how I'm going to do all of my teaching online. And the second is to get the apprenticeship finished and make as many more links with employers as I can, and try and get some apprentices through and get some new staff.
That's a worthy aspiration, and I'm sure you'll achieve that. Thea?
So I think probably it would be taking this as a time where we can think about innovation, making sure that the staff and the team feel empowered to make suggestions and have the skills necessary to implement those things. I want everyone to feel convicted about what they're doing and inspired by what they're up to.
Okay. And Sean?
So taking Alex's point, I suppose it's important to note that the team has become much more important than it ever was before in this situation. But as a kind of follow on from that, their workload has increased exponentially and will continue to increase exponentially over time. And yes, that opens up these creative outlets and interesting solutions and all of this exciting stuff that will develop them. But it also means that I have to protect them from a huge workload, just like tidal wave. And I suppose that's kind of where I'm at. It's about protecting the team from a huge amount of work and a kind of management structure that maybe doesn't know a huge amount about what we do, and has a propensity to say, can you just do this? And it's like, well,
the just
I
word.
can do that, but there's no just about it.
No, I agree with you there. There's nothing just about it. Yeah, that's your sentence. There's nothing just about it. John.
Yeah.
5-minute job. Might take long.
John, the other one that does
the other one.
Stuff.
I think the thing I want to remind everybody about after 3 or 4 months of working from home, that even though you're at home and you go and nip off and have little breaks and stuff, it's not annual leave. I'd just like to remind everybody about annual leave and the importance of it. And I booked a proper day off where I had a day off, and it was great. And make sure you use it, because it's been a I don't know, a surprise. Oh yeah, annual leave.
Yeah,
you don't have to work all the time just because you're at home.
I'm on annual leave right now.
Yeah, same here.
all my team are on an enforced week this week.
Yeah.
Right.
Benji?
Yeah, it's good for your soul.
Benji down there at the bottom of my screen nearly.
Yeah, well, really echoing Thea's points. People of the team, today we're looking at the programme of work we've got ahead of us. We're actually delivering our summer exhibition in October, and it was set to be the probably having the most AV involved, heavy involved exhibition, summer exhibition that we've had. Some of those plans have changed, but there's still R&D and innovative ways that we need to work. So I want my team back, and I want to still keep that sort of inspired sense in delivering that exhibition, but also it feels a crazy time to be doing it as well. So yeah, busy program of work, but also how we deliver it.
And Dan, I know this is going to be really difficult, right? But just give me a small pithy remark that we can close this out with.
So the question is, my concerns ahead. So the small pithy remark is people, not boxing.
I like that. Do I pay you now, or we'll have to pay next time we speak? The drinks
Just
on me.
buy me a drink in the snug in a bit.
And meanwhile, I've had a question came up on Slido from Anonymous, but I think it's someone who's obviously, and of course, not to forget the integrated teams, which bring both design and setup expertise to your teams. So I think there's someone there who might want to be talking to you individually. I don't know who that is, but I thought it's a pithy thing. And I just want to say, I hope we can do this again. Every single one of you has got something to say about things, and we can explore deeper. But I'd just like to thank all of you on behalf of AVCF and iAV20 for turning up and doing such a good sort of job of giving us what we, yeah. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
So I think we're coming up to 4:20. We're not too far behind the schedule, I don't think, but I'd like to bring up with me the AV manager from the Royal Society, Liam Helm, and this is where we get to the bit, or maybe Liam, you can tell us, in fact, you know more than me, as your colleague, could you just give us a brief rundown of the Harrison Award and the whole thinking behind it, and you know better than I do.
Okay, well, first of all, I just wanted to say what a great afternoon it has been. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to watch everything. I've seen some of the content, but not heard everything. I was in the office this morning and got back sort of mid-afternoon. Well, the Harrison Award, as many of you will know, we lost Dave Harrison to COVID in March this year. And some of you will have met Dave at AVC events, some of you will know him. He was an AV guy through and through. He was my assistant manager for 5 years at the Royal Society. Before that, he worked for PSAV at the Dorchester Hotel. And before that, he worked at Sketch, the restaurant, which back in those days had a very impressive 360-degree 12 projector, sort of projection extravaganza. Before that, he studied theatre at college. He was a great guy to have on the team. And I still think about him every day. The staff at the Royal Society really loved him, as did all the people he worked with. And I'll mention a few. All of the guys at the Whitwam group that designed event production and Whitwam AVI. Guys at Jacobs Massey, Graham, Niall, Matt, Annie, Tamsin, Ben and Piotr at M&R Communications, and also Orla and all her fellow transcribers at Page Text, and many more. As he was such a nice guy and such a dedicated AV professional, Chris and I thought we should do something, and we decided to create an award in Dave's name. The idea being that we would award it to someone annually who embodies Dave's qualities. He was kind, selfless, dedicated, hardworking, but always good-humoured and great to be around. And this is what we plan to do going forward. The plan also is that the award will be accompanied by a donation to St George's Hospital charity. Dave's cousin set up a Just Giving appeal, which raised a very impressive amount. The last time I looked, it was, I think it was about £7,500. Obviously, this year, with lockdown, we simply have not had the opportunity to put out requests for nominations and to form a committee and choose a recipient for this award. So this year we will simply be remembering Dave. That said, there will be a donation of £1,000 to St George's, thanks to the Royal Society and this year's very kind Harrison Award sponsor, Shure UK. And I'd like to thank both Shure and the RS for this. There's nothing much more to say, really, Chris. That's where we're heading, and I'd just like to remember Dave today. He was a great guy.
Yes, well said, Liam. Well said. I didn't know him as well as you, but I did meet him, and it was a very cruel twist that someone like that had succumbed. So it's not to be looked on as a sort of a downer that we're ending on, because it's a very important thing that we honour the people in our industry, and this is a way that AVCF and everybody else can keep his memory alive, obviously amongst audiovisual people, and for his family and from people who knew him best. It will never be anything different. It's a sad situation, but I'm happy that we're all going to get together and we're going to mark his name every year, and that's all I've really got to say about that, Liam, if that would suffice. Like you, I think it's hard to express yourself, but I'm really glad that we're doing something to keep his name remembered for the AV world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. So we'll honour Dave as we go forward into the sun. And I'd just like to thank everybody here who's been watching and attending. Some of you may have gone back into the exhibition areas. We're getting to about the 5:30 mark. And I think what will happen now is eventually take a break or drop in. On your screen, you will see a link to something called the Snug, which has been an experiment that we've been sort of testing a few times over the past few weeks with various sort of members of long standing, just to see if it was, and we found it usually on a Friday. It's been a very good place just to sort of chat, and everybody is invited. So anybody on this call can enter the Snug. You might find Karen hovering around there, suspicious by I can't see her. It's hard when you can't see anybody, but and I'd like to thank Jacobs Massey for putting the platform together for us to do this. I'd like to thank everybody over the past few months who's contributed so much to making this happen. I'm quite overwhelmed in a way. I mean, I can't recap, but I think there's been a lot of quality things thrown out there, and I'd like to think that will take the Audiovisual Cultural Forum forward, and it will hopefully attract new people. There are people who sadly couldn't appear, or just due to time constraints I had to cut out, but going forward we will be featuring those people. And just watch this space. If you want to sign up for the newsletter, which comes out once a week, which is really just me wittering on about something or other, or arranging an event like this, please do leave your details. And I'm kind of running out of things to say, but I just want to thank everybody here who's taken part, because it's really been an experience, and I hope you will join us in the Snug. Anybody that's out there, I don't know how many people are out there. or am I just talking to myself? But I hope not. And in fact, I know not. So I will see you in the snug. And that was the Cultural Forum's annual event, iAV20. So we didn't miss it. Bit different this year, but we move forward. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I applaud you.